Alright, so I've been wanting to do this video for a while, and I just haven't, mostly because I'm not really sure how I'm going to format it. Um, like with the Dark Souls 3 one, it was pretty obvious, right? I just played through the game and did that in over a couple episodes. But for this one, I don't know, because I want to go through Vanilla and Scholar side by side, and kind of like not necessarily analyze the differences, but go through them as if they're their own games. Because I don't want to give it a definitive, oh, I think this is better, or oh, I think this is worse. But I just want to like kind of go over them on their own merits. So I don't know. We'll figure this out, I'm sure. But I want to do the same areas of each game in the same episode, right? I think I'm just gonna go with a knight for now. I'll probably switch to the claymore. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I should go with the same build that I did in Dark Souls 3. I know this game significantly better than Dark Souls 3. I don't know how true that is, actually. I feel as though I know this game better than Dark Souls 3. We'll see. Good enough. I didn't exactly put a ton of time into that, but... Oh, right. This one gives you the DLC keys right off the bat. I'm gonna go fight the Ogre. Or the Cyclops, whatever. Not for any particular reason. Is it even here in Vanilla, actually? I'm not sure. I just think things Betwixt warrants exploring. As much as it is definitely a tutorial level. Okay, it looks like it is definitely here. Yeah, cool. Okay, don't get greedy. And I kind of want to like preface things right now, but it's kind of hard to, because like going into this, I know that I really like Dark Souls 2 significantly more than I like Dark Souls 3, right? Less than I like Dark Souls 1, obviously, but that's not because anything Dark Souls 2 does worse. It's just because I prefer what Dark Souls 1 does. Um, Partially because of autism and partially because just normal preferences, right? Um, so like, I don't know. It feels I don't know. It's hard to not compare the games, right? I don't want to compare the games. I do want to compare Vanilla and Scholar, obviously, but not as such. Like I don't want to go into this saying like, oh, I want to see which of the two is better, because that's really not the point. It's more about kind of like figuring out the differences and going from there. But I also especially don't want to compare this to Dark Souls 1 or 3. And there are a lot of things that I know I really like about Dark Souls 2 that I know for sure a lot of people really don't like. ADP is a great example of that. I love ADP as a stat, but like more what it represents in the game as a whole. Because you get a lot more levels in Dark Souls 2 than you do in the other games. And because of that, especially with ADP, it kind of like teaches you that there are so many more ways to build your character. And I'd argue that Dark Souls 2 has the most build variety of any of the games by far. Like you could say that Elden Ring has the most, but the build variety in Dark Souls 2 just feels so much more usable. Like you can use any build in this game. There are builds that will obviously just straight up be better. But in Elden Ring, there are builds that are just worse and feel worse to use and are harder to use. While in Dark Souls 2, I don't think that is quite the case. You could use pretty much anything and be very, very powerful with it. So, I feel like ADP really represents that, simply because it's teaching you that you can either, rely on rolling like you would in the other games. You can very easily rely on shields. You can in Dark Souls 1 as well. But the way that Dark Souls 2 does it, it's like you have to make a decision between heavy shields and rolling, and like, I don't know, it feels less like there are directions for specific builds to take, and more like there are completely different builds that you can use. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I see Dark Souls 2. It's very much about the build of the player rather than the player's skill. While Dark Souls 1 is a lot more about like knowing how to play the game, right? Learning bosses, understanding enemies and their movements and everything. Like that is helpful in Dark Souls 2, and having a good build is helpful in Dark Souls 1, obviously. I'm not saying that those are exclusively it, but it's more of what the focus of the game is on. While Dark Souls 3 is a lot more about the mechanical skill of the player. Uh, in my opinion, it's a lot harder to get an overpowered build in Dark Souls 3 as opposed to Dark Souls 2, where you can shred everything with a soup ladle if you know what you're doing. But I don't know. Going into this, I do know that I like Dark Souls 2, and I do know that there are specific things that I want to talk about, but it's more about the level design of the game, because the level design of the game is what gets talked about most. Like, just the absurd amount of enemies, quote unquote, or the instances where you get ambushed and whatever. Um, like, I talked about it a lot in my video about No Man's Wharf, because I think No Man's Wharf is a wonderful example of why Dark Souls 2 is so good. But I do want to demonstrate how that extends to the whole game, and yeah. There are pretty dramatic differences in the combat with Dark Souls 2. Like, obviously, I imagine most people watching this video have played the game before. But Dark Souls 2 specifically, like, it has the rolling attacks are very directional, which the other games don't have. It's a lot more methodical, is my point. So you have to pay a lot more attention to your character and their relation to the world, as well as their interactions with others than you would in Dark Souls 1. Plunging attacks are also extremely directional, which admittedly does feel pretty weird, and I'm very much not used to. But also, we could light up these sconces with torches, but I don't know. I don't know if that does anything. I will be using torches heavily throughout the game, obviously, because it's a very, very central mechanic. But for now, I think I just want to get to the actual levels of the game. Now, I question whether I should close Vanilla and open up Scholar right now, and go through things betwixt in Scholar, because there are pretty significant differences. I know I didn't go through the fog wall. That's because there are 2 Cyclopses over there, and I really don't feel like fighting 2 Cyclopses right now. That's nothing but a broadsword plus 0. But yeah, we'll come back to things betwixt later for sure. But my main struggle with making this video, and the reason I haven't made it yet, is because I don't know how much of the game I want to cover in this first video, and more so how to go between Vanilla and Scholar. I want to get up to the castle, right, in this one video, but that is a huge chunk of game that I'd have to do in a single video, and I really don't... Oops, my controller disconnected. I really don't think that would be very feasible with the time frame that I have to make this video. And I know I could delay it and not put out a video every week, but putting out a video every week really helps with, like, motivation and whatever. So I will continue to be putting out a video a week, or at least I will do my best to. I don't think I've missed a week yet. Well, that's not true. There were definitely a couple of weeks that I missed, but I think I'm on a pretty good streak right now. I don't remember. I'm going to grab a few things in Majula that I know of. I could kill Mullen. I don't think I'm going to. I know you get the Silver Serpent Ring +1 from Malincha. And I know that's harder to do in Vanilla just because she doesn't sell the Fragrant Branch, which also means that getting to the forest early on is difficult. Not difficult, but I probably won't be going to the forest until after I beat the Sinner, just because I want to keep them on a similar progression path, even though I do want the Claymore. So, I don't know, I'll probably just use the Broadsword, rather, up until I'm able to get the Claymore. I'll talk about bosses more when I get there, but I love a lot of the bosses in this game. Like, the Ruin Sentinels are one of my favorite bosses outright. I love the Ruin Sentinels. And I know that there are a lot of people who do not like the Ruin Sentinels because they're a gank fight. But I feel like Dark Souls 2 is the most conducive to gank fights. Like, both because it expects you to build around your weaknesses, and if you're bad at dealing with groups and gank fights, then you should build around being able to deal with them, right? But also, like, there are just so many more ways to deal with enemies, both out of builds, but more just like the base moveset of your character. It just feels more conducive to group fights. And like, I know that Dark Souls 1 and 2 feel extremely similar. Obviously, they added omnidirectional rolling when locked on, which I think helps with that a lot. But with like Dark Souls 3, they also have the omnidirectional rolling, but it doesn't feel as good to deal with groups in that game because there are a lot more weapons that specifically have targeted attacks. So like a lot of attacks in this game are sweeping, while in Dark Souls 3, a lot of attacks are overhead, right? Or stabs or whatever. And I don't know if that was intentional. It just feels a lot more noticeable to me. I don't know if that's like actually quantifiably correct. But like generally it just feels like Dark Souls 3 combat is a lot more suited to one-on-one, despite having the whole omnidirectional rolling thing and all that. I don't know. I know this game pretty well compared to Dark Souls 3. Not nearly as well as Dark Souls 1. I kind of want to do a video like this on Dark Souls 1, but I'm really not sure how. But that does also mean that the exploration will be probably different. Like, I don't know. We'll see. Like, I know where a good chunk of enemies are in this game. Oops. I will still suffer from skill issues, I can guarantee you that much. Like that bonfire, I knew that was there. If I didn't, I would probably miss that bonfire. Because I wouldn't see any reason to cross the stream, so I probably wouldn't see this little alcove here. This is probably one of the most pointless bonfires in the series. I don't know. It's just because it's right next to Majula, and it's, I don't know. Like, it is not a decent run. It's not that long, but it is a run from the Farfire to here. And I guess not waiting for the gate to open can be nice. But I don't know. It feels kind of pointless. Yeah, so Dark Souls 2 is very much about understanding group encounters as well. Like, it's also about builds, but understanding your character is a big part of that, I think. Watching for ambushes. I genuinely wasn't sure if that was a corpse of an enemy I had already killed or one that was about to attack me. So that's why I ran into it, to see if it would block my movement. And noticing things like that is, like, what Dark Souls 2 is about, on top of the builds and stuff. So, like, really, it's about observation and understanding, as opposed to Dark Souls 1, which is about learning and overcoming, and Dark Souls 3, which is about ostensibly getting better at the game. Like, I don't know, there are several ways you can tackle Dark Souls 3, but it feels like it just wants you to be better at the game. Also, wow, this just throwing you into an actual gank instead of expecting you to be observant of the enemies on the ground, like in Scholar. I know some people say they prefer vanilla, and of the little time that I have spent playing vanilla compared to Scholar, I disagree completely. I can't think of a single thing that vanilla specifically does better than Scholar. Like, I don't think that Scholar is a bad game. But like that instance there, right? There are 3 enemies up here that are already active, as opposed to the, like, what, 8 enemies there that are inactive initially in Scholar that teach you to be observant. Like, there are still things in vanilla that teach you to be observant, but it just feels so much less thought out, which makes sense because Scholar came out afterward and it let them, like, re-examine the level design and everything. But I don't know. Scholar just feels so much better to me in so many different ways. Oh, hi. I genuinely just did not see that guy. One thing that I do like about vanilla is the Heide Knights. I think in Scholar it makes more sense where they are and how they're used. Like turning an early game area into a mid game area for a boss that is significantly harder than the other boss there. However, in vanilla, it just feels nice to have a strong enemy that you can just choose to fight early on. Oh god. And I really wish they had something like that in Scholar. Like they didn't remove the Heide Knights from other parts of the game, and only added them. It does make sense that they removed them, but I wish they hadn't, is the thing. That doesn't mean that I think Scholar is worse in that way. I just do wish there was a stronger enemy. Or like even more Cyan Knights, like they used Black Knights in Dark Souls 1 or something. Because they did also, I mean, they did add several Cyan Knights in Scholar, right? Like there's the one in front of the King's Gate here. There's the one in front of the Ashen Bone Dust or whatever it's called on the way to the No Man's Wharf. There are a bunch that like just aren't in vanilla, and like I'm glad they added them, but they feel so few and far between, and it doesn't feel like there's good reason to fight them in the first place. Like they're not guaranteed to drop their weapons or anything. I don't think. I might be completely wrong. I guess we'll see. Ouch. Ouch. Like I said, not immune to skill issues. We'll be suffering from them frequently. As much as I am a challenge runner, I am not good at these games. Wait, what? There's no enemy here? Okay, that is a theme that I've noticed my few times playing vanilla after Scholar. Like, it feels like there should be an enemy around this corner, right? It feels like there should be something here. So I really like that Scholar takes those moments. Basically every single moment that I had with vanilla that was like, this feels like there should be something here. There is something there in Scholar, right? And like, I know I played Scholar first, but I don't know. It feels like playing through this, that Scholar is the original intention, and this just feels like a weird beta version that didn't have everything they actually wanted in the game. I don't know. I don't know if that's a common opinion, but it just feels weird not having a lot of encounters that you do have in Scholar. Both because I'm used to them from Scholar, but mostly because it just makes sense to have encounters there. Like the Archer not being there, the Archer there in Scholar is such a good touch. And I mean, I'll talk about that more once we start going through Scholar. But God, that is such a good enemy placement. It forces you to be more, again, it forces attentiveness, but it also forces you to play slightly differently than you would otherwise. Like, you can't just rush down the Archer, you have to avoid it while taking out the other enemies so you can get up the ladder. While you can, you know, bait them away or run up the ladder instead. It definitely feels like you're expected to take out the enemies before climbing up the ladder. And I think that Scholar does that in a much more interesting way. Obviously, the enemy around the corner there, you would find that if you were exploring and observing like you're intended to. Obviously, I just knew it was there because I've played this game a lot. But not a lot. I've played this game enough. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and buy some life gems. I should buy the Ferrous Lockstone, actually. Having the Chloranthy ring will be very nice. I should put on the stone ring or whatever. Whichever one I picked up from the ogre. Stone ring, yeah. I think it's just... Is it additional poise or additional poise damage? Reduction of enemy poise. So poise damage. Cool. I don't think that's super useful, but it is nice to have. Bonk. Oops. Ah, no. That was terrifying. I know what I'm doing. I'm good at the video game. I think you can actually make that jump. I don't remember. There are a lot of cool jumps you can make. I do really like that this little hole is the only way back into the main part of the level from here. Because, I don't know, I feel like a ladder leading back up or whatever would be a lot less interesting. But because there's a part of the destroyed environment that you specifically have to use for navigation, I think that's really interesting. But it also brings question to the architecture of this place. Like, I understand that it's ruined, but the scaffolding, right? This is just made of wood. How was it accessed in the first place? Did the original ladder, like, melt away? Not melt away, but rot, you know? I don't know. The game is very surreal when it comes to its architecture and environments, most famously with the Earthen Peak elevator into the Iron Keep. And while that is one of my favorite things about the game, I love how absurdist it is and how weird things are. I can understand why that's a common complaint, but I think it really adds a lot to the atmosphere of this game. Is there... There's nothing in here? Nothing blocking you from grabbing that? Weird. Again, adding the old knight or whatever it's called there was a very, very good touch on Scholar's part. I'll try not to bring up Scholar too much. But, like, I don't know, just a few random enemies wandering around down here feels very empty and strange. And it definitely feels like they should have done more. Like, I want to go through the game on its own merits and not just compare it to Scholar, but no idea why that fireball doesn't hurt you, but it's very nice. Lets you get the fire longsword extremely easily. But I don't think I'll be using that. Oh my god, where did these guys come from? What? I have no idea where they came from, genuinely. Okay, I don't know if that's a failure on my part. Lost connection to Steam. Why? Is it... It's Tuesday, that's why. I don't know if that was a failure of observation on my part, or if they just, like, dropped down from the top or something. Well, I don't know. Interesting. That is a cool encounter, I think. Regardless of if it was my failure or not that caused that. I think that is pretty good. Also, they didn't fix this in Scholar. See that item down there? It actually dropped from the knight up here. So these, like, wooden platforms, especially, they're all over in the gutter. And items could just drop through them, which is really frustrating. And it'll just make them entirely inaccessible sometimes. Like, they'll just drop into the void or whatever. It's really frustrating if you're trying to collect something from a corpse that happens to be... Or collect something, rather, from an enemy that happens to die on one of those wooden platforms. Not usually a big deal, because they don't usually drop anything too important, but it can be definitely frustrating. Yeah. Like I said, only having 3 enemies to get back up here instead of the several enemies with the archer feels like a missed opportunity. Like, that's just... God, that's so good. That's such a good encounter. Okay. I don't know how much I'm going to cut out with Scholar. Because I do want to, like, go through both the games. But if it's something that didn't change... Alright, I forgot. That didn't change heavily. I don't know. Is it really worth going through both of the games completely? I think I'm going to format it more like I did the No Man's Wharf. Actually, I don't remember how much I cut out for vanilla in No Man's Wharf, because I did vanilla second in that. Regardless, I'll figure it out, probably. And then, obviously, if you would rather see the format differently, if you would like me to spend more time on both versions, or like to see a different order of going through things. Like right now, I'm planning on going through this level, and then switching over to Scholar and going through this level in Scholar. But if you would rather see, like, you know, separate videos for them or whatever, let me know. I am totally open to suggestions, because I'm really not sure how to format this yet myself. Okay. I don't remember where the enemies are placed in this version in here. This feels like a weird spot. That is very, very obvious. I suppose it is early in the game, and it makes sense that they would want you to be attentive and to teach you to be attentive in that way. But that felt extremely obvious. This one is less obvious. I don't know if this one actually aggroes if you don't come over this bridge. But I would be surprised if most players didn't come over this bridge to collect that. Though if you do see the enemy laying there at this point, you should probably realize, oh, that's an enemy that I need to take out, otherwise it's going to attack me. Same with this one being behind a pillar. Like, you should be looking behind corners. And this is a great way to do that, because if you see it behind the corner, you're not going to be in immediate danger, as opposed to a lot of enemies that are behind corners that will put you in immediate danger. Like enemies that are just standing there that will be able to get up or will be able to immediately attack you, right? Oops. Oh god. As opposed to an enemy that's like already or it's like already on the ground and isn't going to be able to attack you until it gets up. Like, I don't know. That feels like a safer way to teach that. I don't necessarily think that the other way to teach that is worse, because it does add more urgency and emphasis on showing you, hey, you need to like look around corners. And also if you miss it, it'll be like an obvious, oh, I missed that immediately, as opposed to, what? Where did this enemy come from? Um, so like, oops, they do definitely both have their merits. Um, but I think both are interesting and good ways to do it. Oh god. I need to be more careful. I really don't like that it is blocking, quote unquote, when it has the shield, or when it does the shield bash. I think that's one of the worst things about certain enemies. Like, blocking during that shield bash, that definitely does not look like blocking. Very not good. I think that is the biggest problem with Arcles too. Just weird animations. I don't think there are any that are significant enough to like significantly hamper my enjoyment of the game. But they're definitely enough to be notable. Like a lot of grab animations, you'll kind of teleport to where the grab animation wants you. And that can make it feel like the hitbox is, you know, not where it's supposed to be. So like, if you get hit by the base of the sword, then you get teleported to the tip of the sword for the grab animation, right? I'm not super interested in NPC quest lines for this playthrough. As much as I want to do NPC quest lines, I think I'm gonna leave that for a different time personally. Yeah, I don't know. This cave feels oddly empty. Like, I know that it's specifically so that the boulder can roll down. Having the enemy up there get killed by the boulder is very strange, I think. I don't know. Because it feels like, oh, an enemy died. Weird. I had no influence over that. And I don't think it respawns. I don't remember. I don't usually go into that cave more than once in a playthrough, though. Unless I, like, die to the archer behind or Kale in Scholar. Sorry, my brain went to Elden Ring for some reason. Completely different character. Not even vaguely similar. Other than being weird ways to spell Kale. Being pronounced weird. Oh god. Or their odd relation to the vegetable anyway. Because Kale is a weird way to spell it, and Kale is a weird way to pronounce it. Anyway. I'm rambling. I don't know. I feel like that's part of the charm of this kind of video format. It lets me just kind of talk about things that I feel like I wouldn't ever script. But at the same time, that is, I think, a detriment of this format. I like it. I think it's fun to do, and I hope that the videos are fun to watch as well. Plus, you just kind of get to see me play through Dark Souls in a much more casual way than I do in the streams. It's not like my streams are super, you know, like, intense or whatever, but I don't know, this does feel a lot more casual, I think. So the early pursuer encounter, I really, really love it. It is the only thing this platform is used for at all in vanilla. As you can see, there's literally nothing up here. In Scholar, there are a few items. There are 3 enemies, I think. Oh god. And it's really nice having other stuff to do up here if you happen to die. Or once you kill the pursuer, the enemies will start to aggro on you, and I think that's really cool. But also, like, on a second playthrough, having the option to pick up the items, like, before the pursuer gets there, and then, like, bailing because you know the pursuer is coming. I don't know. I really, really like the pursuer fight. I obviously haven't upgraded my ADP at all yet, and he's kind of designed for that, right? Because obviously early in the game, you're not going to have high ADP. So a lot of his attacks can be dodged by strafing, which I think is super cool. And he's kind of designed to be fought like that, and that does make him easier once you're used to the fight. But like in my first playthrough, the pursuer was insanely difficult. Like I learned to parry because of the pursuer. Like the ballista in the main arena that you don't get here. I don't know. The ways that you encounter the pursuer, especially in Scholar, on top of it just being a very solid fight, and the way it's very clearly designed for the early game. It does kind of make New Game Plus encounters with the Pursuer a little bit different and significantly easier, as opposed to, you know, just being higher damage, so being harder. But that's kind of how it is with early game bosses in New Game Plus regardless. So, I don't know. I think this is a very, very good fight, and I very much enjoy it. It's one of my favorite fights in this game. Oh god. I wasn't expecting that. That combo is not very common. Oops. Really? Need to be a bit more cautious, I think. Also, life gems. Life gems are a huge thing in this game that a lot of people either really like or really don't like. Personally, I'm in the really like camp because it really adds a lot to exploration and what they can do for exploration. Estus feels like it's very useful for, like, quick heals for, like, enemy encounters and stuff. If you need to heal in the middle of an enemy encounter. So it doesn't really take away from the, tension and whatever of Estus that you have life gems, but life gems are very good for exploration. And obviously, as I just demonstrated, you can heal in the middle of fights with life gems. And the game, I feel like, does expect you to at points, but it's definitely very much suited such that you would want to use Estus in the middle of fights and life gems in the middle of exploration, which is why them being unlimited, I think, is also really helpful, just because it's like, you know, you don't have to worry about having a limited amount in the middle of exploring something. There we go. Fun little... I think this is one of the best shortcuts in the series, just because of the way it's accessed and everything. Like, there are explosive barrels, and I don't know if there are actually other explosive barrels beforehand. They changed that in Scholar. Are there any that way? I don't remember. But it's like, there's a firebomb enemy throwing firebombs next to barrels that are differently colored from the other barrels. So it's like, obviously they're gonna explode. And being able to use that to your advantage, I think, is really cool. Hello? Can you stop, please? Thank you. Jeez. I should level up, actually. Instead of going completely gung-ho. I also want want to get the thing from her. Do I want Brave Bugs? No, I'm not gonna use Brave Bugs. I'll take 5, sure. That way she will definitely give me that, which will help in the future. And then I shall go back to Majula after I beat the last tryout. I can go to Majula and level up. And then obviously I can also use the Soul of the Pursuer. I don't think I will be using boss weapons at all, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that for some levels. That is a lot of souls. Jeez, I forgot how much I gave you. You do get a lot more levels in Dark Souls 2 than the other games, like I said, which I feel like will make using just a normal claymore less effective than it could be. But I also feel like that's part of the fun part. It'll also make it easier to use a shield, obviously. Shields, I feel like, are a pretty good, big part of the game. And like, while it does expect you to make the decision between being offensive and rolling and having a shield, it doesn't force you to, and I think it's cool that you can still kind of level to be or to use multiple playstyles at once, especially with the whole respecking thing, since the game is so much more about your build and about your character than Dark Souls 1 and 3 are. Because with Dark Souls 3, respecking feels like a spot of convenience, right? Dark Souls 2, it feels like, oh, well, we want you to experiment and explore with your character and use your character in different ways, and I think that's really cool. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not. I haven't met anyone who shares it, but God, the Dark Souls 2 soundtrack is the best to me. Like, obviously, Majula is incredible, Firekeepers is incredible, but even just the boss fight music is so good. And I think the other games have good music too, but I don't know. I just think that this game has the best music. Walking into that room and seeing a bunch of ballistas right in front of you is so fun. That's such a good encounter. I really like this room. Then it just kind of turns into fighting a few enemies, but I think the way it's done is also really good. Wait, that's it? There's only 2 in here? I could have swore there were more. There must be more in Scholar. Oh, hey. I don't know where you came from. But just being, like, able to funnel them out, and especially having the first one killed by the ballista is really good, I think. I really like this room. This is a very, very good room. It's also very funny. Okay, now we get a knock. I think knocking is actually the only way. I mean, you can hit it with a weapon, but I think knocking is the only way to get through this door, which I think is really funny. I don't think you can find a key for it. Actually, I think it's because it opens from the other side. I don't remember. But at the very least, that is a way you can get through it, and I think that's amazing. I love silly interactions like that in these games, and I think Dark Souls 2 has them most. Don't quote me on that. But there's really not much like that in the other games. At least not in the same way. Because while Dark Souls 1 does have unique interactions with enemies and stuff, there's nothing like knocking on a door and an enemy opening it for you. That's really fun. You have to hit these? You do. I forgot. Okay, so this is a trap chest, and it can have 2 different traps. This one, I always forget that rolling back is the best way to deal with it. I've always just kind of rolled behind the chest, but it's easier if you roll away, and then you can position yourself between 2 of the arrows. And the other is poison, and you just need to run directly away from the chest, and you won't get poisoned. Not super dangerous, but, you know. Also, I believe this is a Titanite slab. Yeah. Getting a Titanite slab super early, I think, really emphasizes the fact that the game wants you to use different builds. It wants you to explore different weapons. I think that's signifying, hey, you're not going to get, 2 Titanite slabs in the entire game without grinding. Feel free to experiment, try different weapons, upgrade whatever you want. Because upgrade material in this game is significantly less rare than in Dark Souls 1, especially. But it's also significantly less rare than Dark Souls 3, which is annoying. I don't even think you can grind for Titanite slabs in Dark Souls 3, which is really stupid. Because you get one from Siegmeyer, whatever, one of the 2. And then oh my god. And then you get one from Under the Twin Princes. There's probably a couple in the DLC at least, but I don't know. I don't remember. Point is, they're significantly less common, oh my god, than in Dark Souls 2. Which is a shame, because I think exploring different weapons and trying different builds is extremely fun, and Dark Souls 2 makes that very, very easy. There's an illusory wall, right here. I'm not entirely positive how you're supposed to find that. I just kind of know that's there. I think it's just like a dust herb or something, though. Ember herb, yeah. Kind of useless. Also, the fact that these enemies don't aggro while you're in that room. Or, I mean, they don't follow you into that room, at least. They might, actually, and I just got lucky. But regardless, I'm glad they didn't. But I probably should have looked up here before going to that tiny room. So if I would have gotten ambushed, that definitely would have been on me. I should probably be using my life gems earlier than my Estus. Wow, that is a very... Hold on. That is a great sound design. Anyway, I should be using my life gems as I explore, but I'm using my Estus instead. I don't really need this, actually. I don't want to do his quest. Also, item over here. Just a green blossom. Not super useful. I don't think I've ever used a green blossom. Let's see. Do I have an extra firebomb? I'm pretty sure the barrels over there were explosive. But I don't think I have an extra firebomb, unfortunately. Or fire arrows, yep, since they're behind there. I have witching urns, yeah, but no firebombs. So I will not be blowing up this old knight. Or whatever they're called. Old Ironclad Knights. That's what they're called, I think. I'm pretty sure. These guys throwing firebombs down at you, I think is pretty good. Especially, you know, around the explosive barrels once again. So if you missed the shortcut from earlier, you can recognize, oh hey, these guys threw bombs at barrels and they exploded. So maybe I should try that on the other suspiciously placed barrels that I saw. Why didn't that plunging attack? Oop. Oh god. I very much attribute that to skill issue. But it's fine. I'm still mostly good at the video game. That jump up there is shockingly difficult. I don't even remember what it gives you, but it is surprisingly difficult for how easy it looks, and I have messed it up many, many times. Okay. You can also get this guy to blow up the barrels for you. If he does the side swing, it's much easier. Oh god. Stop! Do a good attack, please. I want to show off. I want to show off the explosions. Oh my god. Do a swing. I swear. Ah! I forgot he had that attack. Do a swing. Oh my god. I swear. He has an attack where he swings. Does he just not do it in vanilla? Did they add that in Scholar? What the hell? This is truly good enemy. I do like that they put the old Ironclad Knight with the explosive barrels earlier in the level. It's just before the checkpoint in Scholar, which I think is better. It's like, it'll work eventually, and it did work. He was right. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, they put the old Ironclad Knight with the explosive barrels before the shortcut, which I think is good, because it like shows you, hey, these are definitely explosive barrels, even if the firebomb guy doesn't throw one directly at the barrels, which is actually pretty difficult to get it to do. So yeah, I think that is better, but either way, it does still somewhat teach you that there's a shortcut. Or at least that there is a potential cool thing that you can do with the black barrels from earlier in the level. This encounter, I think, is a good... If you miss the guy on the ground, that's very much on you. But regardless of whether or not you miss the guy on the ground, this guy will attack you, right? And it's like on a narrow little bridge, so it'll be almost impossible to avoid him. You actually have to confront him, which is very much saying, hey, pay attention to where you are and look around. While in Scholar, I think it teaches that lesson a little bit more aggressively because there are a lot more enemies there. You'll see once we get there. But I don't know. I feel like it's a lot more warranted in Scholar because of how aggressively the game teaches you to look around beforehand as well. And you're still early in the game. That will likely be before you've fought a boss. So I think it's okay to teach harsh lessons extremely early on. I'd argue the same is true of Dark Souls 1 with the Drake Bridge. Like, even if you do get burned by the Drake, you know, you lost, what, 3,000 souls? And then it's at the end of one of the easiest levels. Or, you know, the first level in the game. Which, at the beginning of the game, can feel disheartening. But it's also, like, I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Even for a first-time player. Speaking from experience. Oh, hi. I forgot that I'm still human. I haven't died yet. That's just because I'm good at the game or something. Also, I don't know if you saw, but there was an old Ironclad Knight on the elevator here, which I think is funny. Actually, I'm going to send this elevator back up so that the other side comes down so I can fight that guy after beating the old giant, or the last giant, rather. I think this is an NPC. Yeah, Pate. Interesting that he helps you with a boss. Especially because he very clearly doesn't care about you. I wonder if he just specifically wants the boss dead so that he can... I don't know. What would he want out of the last giant being dead? Why does he give you the soapstone? Is it so that you'll trust him? So he can stab you in the back later? I don't know. Okay, so the last giant, I think it's a good difficulty for a first boss. Okay, so this was my first Souls game. Specifically Scholar was my first Souls game at all, ever. And I think that for a first boss ever, that is a... Oh, it wasn't. It's not an old Ironclad Knight in this. I thought it was. In Scholar, that's an old Ironclad Knight. Anyway, the Last Giant, I think, is a really good difficulty for a first Souls boss, especially at the end of this level. Though, I don't know, it's very, very much focused on positioning, which I think is very cool. If you're under it, you need to be away from the feet that are actively stomping, and that very much teaches you positioning, which I think is good. But, I mean, the hitboxes can be kind of funky as well. So, I don't know. I do like the boss, and I do think it is a good first boss, especially for this game. I don't love it. It's not my favorite. Well, I don't know. I think the Asylum Demon is probably the best tutorial boss in this series, and I think EDX Gundyr is the worst. And this does kind of fall in the middle of that, but not because it's better than EDX or worse than the Asylum Demon. It just kind of isn't great. This isn't where I meant to go. Oops. I meant to go across the bridge and open the gate that was locked that I didn't attempt to open earlier. I didn't know that guy came so far, actually. I wouldn't have expected him to. I think on Scholar he just kind of chills on the bridge until he notices you, but I could be completely wrong about that. So this area is an instance where vanilla feels like it should have something here, but there's just nothing. Wait, there's like actually nothing. I thought there was a chest out here. Okay, wow, there's literally nothing here. Like, I know it leads up to this later, but this feels like such a dramatic area. Why did it not have the king's door here instead? I don't know. It really feels like there should be something there. Regardless, I believe this is the healing ring, whatever it's called. Yeah, Ring of Restoration. I think for now, I'll put this on over the stone ring, and then I'll replace that with, like, the Ring of Binding later or something. Or I can just attempt to stay human, but I'm really not that good at this game. Especially compared to, like, Dark Souls 1, where that would be something that I would be willing to attempt. So because we already killed the Pursuer... Oh, wait, there's a whole other area I need to go to first. I don't know how well this area, like, shows off the... I'm going to level up first, too. Actually, first. Anyway, as I was saying, I don't know how well this area that I'm about to go into really demonstrates anything, but it is part of the game, and this is more about analyzing the game than analyzing how the game teaches you to play it. So, as much as this will be the beginning of the game, I suppose. I think for this episode, I'm going to go up to the center. I feel like that makes sense, because this is going to be about an hour and a half for... like one level for the forest. I mean, things betwixt as well, but mostly just the forest, right? And I feel like a couple hours is the perfect length for a video like this, as much as I'll be covering 2 games instead of 1 this time. I don't know. I like that idea. I think going up to the La Center will work pretty well, especially since later levels get a lot shorter. The Forest of Fallen Giants is one of the longest levels in the game, if I remember correctly. Hello? Come here, please. I didn't need to come down here. What am I doing? I know where I'm going. 35 minutes on the torch? Wow. So early in the game, too. I guess that kind of shows how important they expect the torch to be. As much as it's not, like, super important, it is very nice to have in a lot of places. Like this one, it is very nice to have the torch for such a dark hallway like this. It is significantly more important in Scholar, in my opinion. But... Hello? There we go, jeez. Whoa, hi! I was not expecting you. Also, the torch forcing you to play one-handed, I think is really cool. Using the one-handed moveset rather than the two-handed moveset. So if you've been relying on a two-handed moveset, you kind of have to forgo that if you want to use a torch, or vice versa, forgo the torch if you want to use the two-handed moveset. The darkness in Vanilla is a lot less dark than Scholar, but it's still enough that it's like, oh hey, a torch would be nice, but it's still more of like a choice, right? So you can choose whether or not to use a torch to make things easier to see while making combat potentially harder. So I don't think that the torch being not necessary is a bad thing. In fact, I like it quite a bit. I need to level up my ADP if I'm going to be relying on rolling this much. There we go. And okay. I know this area has a lot more Ironclad Knights than any other area in the forest, even in Scholar. Wow, that light is not that illuminating. Right. Oh wow, there's just one chill in there. Let's see. Ugh. Are there 3 up here like in Scholar? No, there's only... Oh, okay, there are 2. Still. In Scholar, there are explosive barrels here. Ugh. Oh, cool. There are explosive barrels here, which let you deal with the knights significantly easier and in a significantly more unique and cool way. But not having them, I feel like... not having them, but instead having fewer knights. I don't think it's a necessarily worse encounter. It just is a very different encounter. I think the old Ironclad Knights should have been a little bit more prevalent in the forest. I don't know, actually, in more required spots in the forest, because there's kind of only one that you're required to encounter when going through the forest the first time. While in Scholar, there are... It's kind of also only one, but they make use of them in a lot more interesting ways, I think. Anyway, point is, I like the older Ironclad Knights, and I wish they would have used them more, because they very, very much heavily discourage backstab fishing, right? You literally can't backstab fish them because because you can't backstab them, but you can't even get behind them. And if you try, they'll fall over on you. Oh my god, excuse me. Everything's fine. Oh god, there's another one. There's so many over here. Anyway, they teach you to avoid just trying to stay behind the enemy, which I think is cool. Teach you aggression and positioning pretty well as well, without just saying, hey, get behind the enemy, and that's your positioning, right? So while I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be able to stay behind enemies like you can in Dark Souls 1, not being able to is cool, I think. Especially for this being a direct sequel to Dark Souls. I don't know, coming off of that game, I think that would be a big thing to adjust to, because backstabs really are not nearly as powerful in this game as they are in Dark Souls 1. And as much as I really do enjoy like using backstab invincibility to my advantage and everything, and I think it's a really fun mechanic to exploit, I do understand why they wanted to change that. And I know a lot of people think that backstabs are way too overpowered in Dark Souls 1. And the way that Dark Souls 2 covers that and makes them not overpowered is by removing your invincibility during backstabs, and also making them impossible to use on certain enemies. And I think that's a really good way to do that. I know a lot of people really prefer the way like Bloodborne did that. Personally, I prefer the way Dark Souls 2 does it. But I don't know. Alright, do we get invaded here, like in Scholar? I don't think so, which is good, because Dennis is annoying. That's one thing that this area definitely has less in Scholar. Another thing I feel like Scholar encourages is the old Ironclad Knights, like, interacting with these destructible walls. Because obviously they didn't even get destroyed here, but in Scholar it's very difficult for them to not get destroyed. I don't think I've ever gone through that area without them getting destroyed. Anyway, now we can go up to where the Pursuer would normally be. Like I said, I really like the Pursuer, having multiple spots to fight him, having so many different strategies, like parrying, positioning, using the ballistas, like, it's such a good boss. I love the Pursuer. Especially coming right after the Last Giant, like, the Last Giant directly leads you to the Pursuer, right? So it feels like kind of a continuation of the tutorial. Like, okay, you've learned positioning is important. Now find your strategy. And I think that's super awesome. I really, really love the Pursuer. There are no enemies here. That's strange. Okay. It really feels like there should at least be an enemy, like an archer here, like there is in Scholar. But there just isn't? Okay. I mean, I guess it leads up to a boss, but still, it feels like there should be something there. But yeah, like I said, the ballistids are pretty great. One of the best parts of the Pursuer fight. And actually how I ended up beating him the first time. So while it's not always an option to use your environment to your advantage, the game definitely encourages you to take advantage of the few instances where that is the case. And I feel like Scholar has a lot more instances where your environment can be used to your advantage. Like, there are a lot more explosive barrels and stuff, for instance, which I really like. But yeah, God. Dark Souls 2 is so good. Why do people hate it? I don't understand. I feel like it might be a good idea to go back and do hides now? I don't know. I'm gonna continue with the last Bastille, and then we'll go to hides later. Oh, one thing I definitely really do not like about vanilla as opposed to Scholar is when you get access to infusions and stuff. With Scholar, you get infusions as soon as you get to the last Bastille, basically. But in vanilla, you don't get access to infusions until you get to the Iron Keep, which is so late in the game. Like, that's so long to just go without infusions entirely. So while the position of the infusions in Dark Souls 2 Scholar, I like it more. It's also like, I don't know, it makes infusions not really feel like a reward though, because you do just kind of have access to them as soon as you reach McDuff, assuming, you know, you specifically went through the Pursuer, which I imagine most people do. All right. I don't remember if the Pursuer attacks you here. I don't think it does. Yeah, that's a Scholar thing, which it makes it very much feel weird that there's just nothing here. I have no idea what the antiquated key is for. It's fine, probably. Oh, we're coming up to one of my favorite bosses too, the Ruin Sentinels. Though we do have to kind of go through this level to get there. Pardon me. There we go. I do... Okay, so in vanilla, on the way to the center, there are a couple really annoying enemies that I really want to just run past. I'm going to talk to Lucasile because she's cool. There are a lot of really annoying enemies that I really want to run past, but, like, I shouldn't for the sake of the series. I don't know. I'll complain about how annoying they are, I suppose. Right, there are a couple... Yeah, large Titanite, or there's a large Titanite showed up here. I thought there were more. There are no enemies over there. That's strange. Oh, that's a grab? Oh my god, I was expecting the fireball. Let me go. Ugh. Ow. Very interesting grab. There we go. I'm less hesitant to use my Estus than I probably should be. If I didn't know where the next checkpoint was, I'd probably be a lot more hesitant to use my Estus, which I feel like does kind of influence my experience with the game, but... Huh. It feels like the game expects you to come from the other direction, actually. I wonder how many playtesters came from the direction of No Man's Wharf as opposed to from this direction. Because it feels like they placed enemies expecting you to come from that way. Oh, right, I should probably. Yeah. Cool, it exploded. Sometimes it just doesn't explode for some reason, which is really annoying. And when it doesn't, like, you just got the fire arrows and you probably have the longbow, or the short bow from, Leningrast's workshop. And that lets you just explode the barrel, like use a fire arrow to explode the barrel. But if you didn't grab one of those for whatever reason, or don't know that the fire arrows will explode that, it can be extremely frustrating to actually get into McDuff's. And a lot of the time we'll just end up restarting completely. Go ahead and move McDuff real quick so I can... What the heck? Oh, the dog behind that wall, right? There we go. That will move McDuff over so that I can access the chest that he's sitting on. And I believe this also lets him upgrade my stuff and opens a shop and everything, despite not having the Ember. Yeah, the Twinkling Titanite, which I won't end up using. Scholar has a lot more Twinkling Titanite, mostly because of the Pursuers. Like the random Pursuer enemies do end up dropping Twinkling Titanite if you kill them. Vanilla has very little Twinkling Titanite comparatively. But it is really nice to just give you a bunch of Titanite here. A lot of materials to upgrade your stuff. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Oh, is he talking about the fire? A wild one? You can't have him upgrade your stuff at all until you get the... That's so dumb. So you can't even buy large Titanite shards until after you get the Ember. That's so dumb. That's awful. Jeez. Okay, in that case, I'm gonna not use my large Titanite shards until I get my Claymore. But with Dark Souls, or with Scholar rather, it definitely feels... it feels better to be able to buy large Titanite shards there and everything. So, that's... Ugh, gross. I don't like not being able to buy large Titanite shards yet. Not because it'll be like more difficult or whatever, just because it feels like you should be able to so that you can experiment with builds, because that feels like what the game is teaching you to do, especially this early on. Like, hey, maybe try out different weapons because you have plenty of access to upgrade materials. But then it just withholds large Titanite shards from you for a long time, or at least an easy way to collect significantly more of them. Ugh. Ouch. Explosive barrels. Ow. I'm gonna go ahead and pop a life gem, actually. Oh god. Ugh. Everything's fine. Come on. Dogs are they're not that bad in Dark Souls 2 specifically. They're definitely worse in Dark Souls 1 and 3, but in terms of annoyance, I don't even think they're that annoying in Dark Souls 1, but these configurations I feel like are significantly worse than Scholar's configurations. More annoying than Scholar's configurations, especially with the dogs specifically. Don't know how common of an opinion that is though. I haven't really seen anyone, like I've seen people talk about Scholar versus Vanilla, and a lot of them seem to prefer Vanilla for whatever reason. Like I genuinely still do not know why. Even after watching the videos and arguments and everything, but I was going on a tangent there. Oh yeah, but I don't know, I just haven't seen that many people like directly compare small differences like the placement of enemies and whatever. Also, what I was gonna do, I should explore actually. Didn't think about that instead of sprinting straight to the boss. I was going to do forest. Oh my god. Oh my god. I was going to do the forest in Vanilla and then switch over to Scholar, do the forest there. But instead I feel like it makes sense to go up to the center in one and then go up to the center in the other. Oh my god. Okay. An instance of needing to use your environment to separate groups. There's probably a way to avoid being ganked this much. And it's entirely on me for not trying to do that in the first place. A lot of enemies here, man. Not that bad still. I know a lot of people complain about having to fight groups like that. I really don't think that's much of an issue, especially when you realize that you can kite and separate them using the terrain, which I just didn't do. But it would be a lot easier if I had ran up the stairs and then dropped down and dealt with the ones that I'd lagged behind. Oh my god, pardon me. Instead of just kind of going full force like I did. I probably could have done that hitless if I really wanted to. Okay. One problem I have is that these gates take forever to open, and your hitbox for like terrain collision, oh my god, where are you going, is actually bigger. What are you doing? Than it looks like. So like your hitbox for those gates specifically is actually significantly above where your head is, where your visual head model is. What? Is he gonna climb back up? Is he running around? Is he climbing? What is... Oh, hi. What is happening? Are you okay? Hello? What is... Is he gonna follow me down? Okay, his pathing, I think, got a little bit messed up, and so he climbed down to try to run around to me, instead of just attacking me for whatever reason. I've never seen that. It's really funny. Anyway, now we actually get to fight one of my favorite, probably my favorite boss in this game. One of my favorite bosses in the whole series. How many of these are open? I think this is Lucatiel. Belclair. I have no idea who that is. Okay. Lucatiel you can summon from somewhere. I'm just not entirely sure where. Rune Sentinels. Okay, so I love the Rune Sentinels a lot. I think it's super cool that the others won't attack you until you beat the first one up here. So it like teaches you the moveset of them and expects you to learn how to deal with them quickly and effectively. Because you're on such a small platform, so like it also teaches you spatial management and positioning and all that. But also the fact that the other two attack you separately. So like the first one will drop down significantly quicker and will be on this platform significantly faster. So I will actually be able to do a little bit of damage to it before the second one even gets anywhere near me. I swear I jumped up eventually, jeez. So you can deal some free damage to it, since it's so much easier to deal with one at a time. And then when you do drop down, in my opinion, it is significantly, or it's pretty easy to actually keep track of them. I don't know how common of an opinion that is, but I don't think it's too difficult to like pay attention to which one is which. I don't know why they have different names. I don't know why they're all named individually, probably just lore reasons. In Scholar, I've never seen it happen in vanilla. I feel like it probably can. Oh god. Ooh, that's scary. But in... Oh my god. Okay, in Scholar, one of them, usually this one, will actually throw its shield at you and will be a lot more offensive, but it won't have its shield, right? So it'll be easier to separate from the other one, and it'll be easier to deal damage to it in the first place. Wow, I am really suffering from skill issue right now, Jesus. But it doesn't seem like that's happening right now. It doesn't seem like it's gonna end up throwing its shield. Oh god. I have no idea how to dodge that attack, to be honest. That's the one attack that the Rune Sentinels have that I don't understand how to dodge. Okay, this fight is better in Scholar, I swear. We'll get there. The run back isn't that bad, in my opinion. There is a shortcut you can open up that's oddly difficult to take. In Scholar, this run back is even easier, but in vanilla, it's not that bad. The hardest part of the run back in Scholar is the two or three Royal Knights just before the door into the building to actually get to the Rune Sentinels. But I guess in vanilla, it's all the dogs. This door closes? Why? I don't think it does that in Scholar. I'm pretty sure it just stays open. Normally I go this way because the lever, I don't go the way with the lever because you don't need to kill these enemies, and I can usually kill the Rune Sentinels first try. So this way is usually easier, but I guess I can go the other way since I have that way unlocked now. Okay, so if this one drops, you can actually just wait up here for it to come back. The other two will not aggro unless you drop down. Well, I didn't know it could hit you in this corner. Oops. Skill issue, I guess. Wait, this one's throwing its shield. What? The one with more health is throwing... Why? Oh my god. Okay, I kind of got frame trapped there. I presume running is the easiest way to deal with that. I think it's because I focus one down before touching the other one that I've never seen that happen in vanilla. Because normally I won't damage the second one at all until the first one is down, but clearly that is non-optimal. Everything's fine. Okay. Yeah, usually the one without the shield is also significantly more aggressive, which seems to be the case here. Oops. Ow. Okay, I'm just going to play a little bit cautiously, I think. Okay. Skill issue on my part, unironically. Everything's fine. This is an easy boss. It's gotta be good at the video game. Oh, that was my fault. I shouldn't have attacked when it was priming to do an attack. I am shocked I didn't get hit there, to be entirely honest. Come on. Jesus. Finally. Just the ruin sentinels. This is... I like this fight. Normally, I swear it's better in Scholar. You'll see. It really is. I don't know why. It just is. I mean, it kind of has to be better than this to be one of my favorite fights in the series and my favorite in the game. Jesus. That was awful. That's a lot of souls. Whoa. I forgot. This game gives you so many souls. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to find these illusory walls again. I know Seek Guidance is pretty good for finding illusory walls, and that's probably how you're expected to. But I just kind of know they're here, which does change my progression through the game slightly. This guy, I think, is actually a really good trap. Just like with the Drake and Drixel's one, like, I don't know, you're going to be a lot more cautious after fighting a boss anyway, but the best way to get past that is by, or without getting hit, rather, is by just running past, right? But also, I don't know, you just came out of a boss fight, so getting back to that spot will be pretty easy. You know, assuming you don't die their dogs. But, I don't know, I feel like that's a fine trap. It's also a really good way of introducing the enemies that explode. I think that's a good way of doing that. Actually, I'm going to go through the Heide's Tower of Flame before going through the Sinner's Rise. I think that makes sense. Kill all the enemies on the path, or all the bosses on the path to the First Lord before actually fighting the First Lord. With the old Dragon Slayer armor being an exception, because that's very clearly a mid-game boss. And I want to have a +6 at least before doing that fight. But, you know, vanilla doesn't let you safely while still also upgrading another weapon for some reason. This is an oddly long run down here. This is actually where I ended up going in my very first playthrough. Like, the very first thing I did was come in here. Which is obviously a bad idea. The Forest of Fallen Giants is, in my opinion, and in most people's opinion, significantly easier. Rather, this place is significantly easier with the lessons that you learn in the Forest of Fallen Giants. And the Forest of Fallen Giants is easier to learn those lessons in. If you come into this place first, it'll be harder. But if you go into a second, in my opinion, it's easier. So doing the forest does seem like the correct choice to do first. Mostly because these guys are very, very positioning focused. And obviously, they're going to have a lot more health than standard enemies in the forest. Not a ton of health, but more, you know. Okay. Had to go to the bathroom. Hopefully that doesn't mess with my rhythm. My steez, as it were. Okay, one thing that I do think is really weird is this random enemy. I believe this one drops the Ashen Bone Dust, or whatever it's called. That's so little damage. I was expecting so much more damage. That might have just been less damage than its other attacks because of where it is in the combo. Anyway, this random enemy, yeah, the Sublime Bone Dust. Why does that random enemy drop Sublime Bone Dust? It's not like an especially difficult enemy. It's not a mini-boss. It's just some random enemy dropping Sublime Bone Dust. I mean, I suppose at the point that you get to this part of the game, it'll probably feel a little bit more difficult than most random enemies you've encountered by then, and it does have more health than the sword guys. But, like, there are other of those hammer guys. So, like, it just... I don't know. I'm not going to do the cheese with this boss. I do think it's really funny that you can make it fall off. And I do really like the risk-reward of exploring more and having more ground to stand on, but also kind of removing that option of potentially making the boss fall off, as difficult as that is. There have been very, very few times where I've pulled both levers. So seeing the arena completely filled in is very strange. Having a duel with this guy I think is really cool. It would make so much more sense if this guy dropped the... Jeez, I don't know why my voice cracked. If this guy dropped the Sublime Bone Dust. Ow. Wait, why are these two... What the... Okay, normally they wait for you to, like, finish the duel to actually attack. I have no idea why they're being so aggressive right now. Yeah, either way, it feels like that sword guy should have more health and also should drop the Sublime Bone Dust. Just because it feels like so much more of a, I don't know, spectacle than than the hammer guy, the random hammer guy that actually dropped the Sublime Bone Dust. There we go. And then that opens up this other lever, which I didn't know of for a very long time. I don't know why it took me so long to learn of this second lever. But that completely fills in the arena, so it's impossible to fall off during the boss fight. I'm going to go over there later. Honestly, even if the sword guy did drop the Sublime Bone Dust, despite being so much more of a spectacle, I think there's another one right there. I think this is the same sword guy as the one that was in the middle of this room. And then immediately after we fight the Dragonrider down here, there's another one in, like, the hallway over there. That leads to the No Man's Wharf. I don't remember, actually, if... Oh, wait, this is just one. Never mind. I was going to say I don't remember if that's in vanilla, but here's one here. So, like, even that one dropping the Sublime Bone Dust probably wouldn't feel like it makes much more sense. Wait, so that is the only hammer guy in vanilla, then, at least in this area. Oh, that's so weird. It still feels like a normal enemy, though, right? I don't know. That's very strange. Green Blossom. I have no idea where the ring is, then. It might be actually over at the cathedral. One thing I do want to talk about that I haven't really yet, that I do want to touch on throughout the series, is the atmosphere of Dark Souls 2 is so much better, in my opinion, than the atmosphere of Dark Souls 1 and 3, or even Bloodborne. I think that the atmosphere of Dark Souls 2, while not quite as heavy as Bloodborne, is a lot more interesting and a lot more varied and a lot better in a lot of ways than Bloodborne's. I really love the atmosphere of Dark Souls 2. Like, you have Majula, you have the Tower of Flame here. Like, even the crypt just feels so much more intense with its atmosphere than anywhere in Dark Souls 1 or 3. While Dark Souls 1 and 3, well, Dark Souls 1 at least, has good atmosphere, it's not nearly as strong as Dark Souls 2's. Yeah, I just love the vibe and atmosphere of Dark Souls 2. I want to see if the Ring of Binding, or whatever it's called, is over here. And I think the Spear Heide Knight is not here either. Okay. I have no idea where all the Heide Knights are in vanilla, actually. There's another knight over here? Just one? Really? I mean, okay. I do think that these ones are probably the hardest, just because they have the most, like, sweeping attacks. But none of them are particularly difficult. I'm surprised I didn't at least have a Hammer Knight over here. Or at least two? I don't know. That's weird that one normal knight is guarding the entrance to the cathedral, as opposed to multiple, or even, like, having a different kind of knight there. A harder one. I want to see if the ring is up here. I'm not going to fight the Dragon Slayer armor yet. Like I said earlier, I'm going to wait until I get the Claymore at least to +6. Yep, Ring of Binding, that is. I'm going to put that on over the Ring of Restoration. Oh, my controller disconnected. That's super awesome. There we go. That will give us a little bit more health, and will give us significantly more health than we would have otherwise later on. I need to start leveling my ADP as well. I might actually use my Bonfire Ascetic starting gift to... Speaking of which, Bonfire Ascetics are awesome. Super amazing. One of the best features of Dark Souls 2, and it is so annoying that they didn't bring it back for Dark Souls 3. They didn't put it in Dark Souls Remastered. They didn't use it in Elden Ring. Like, Elden Ring feels like the perfect place to have something like a Bonfire Ascetic. But also, Dark Souls 2 uses New Game Plus so much more. There are so many things that you can't get until New Game Plus. There are souls that lead to weapons. There are full weapons. There are rings and upgrades and spells that you just can't get until New Game Plus, which I think is super awesome. It adds so much more to replaying the game, and I really love that. And I really wish the other games did that more, but, you know, whatever. Actually, speaking of New Game Plus, the Phantom enemies in New Game Plus that this game adds, because this game adds quite a few enemies, use the same system as Gravelording in Dark Souls 1. So I think it might be fitting if I were to do a video like this in Dark Souls 1, if I were to do Gravelorded. I think that might be interesting to see. Though I don't know how many enemies Gravelording actually adds. I know it does add quite a few, but I don't know if they're like significant enough to really change a full playthrough like that. Regardless, I do kind of want to do a video like this on Dark Souls 1. Just because of how much I love Dark Souls 1 and how long it's been since I've done a slow, analytical playthrough of that game. I beat this boss first try in my first playthrough, which was, you know, the first time I had played through any Souls game, and I was very, very proud of myself for beating that boss first try. I know it's not super difficult, but, you know, you kind of got to give it to me. This girl, I might just kill her. I'm just going to kill her. She will... No. She charges you to go through a different path later. But if you kill her, she drops the lockstone, so you can just go through yourself without having to pay her. And I think... Oh, I didn't mean to backstab. I think it makes sense to kill her now. Even though this is supposed to be like a analytical playthrough more than anything. Oh my god. Was that Wrath of the Gods this early in the game? Jesus. Oh my god. Okay. Everything's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and heal a bit. Did she just use Healing Miracle? That's fine. I'm just gonna push her off the edge. Perfect. Sorry, such a funny fight. And then if you rest, it will actually move her drop, which is really cool. And I mean, in Dark Souls 1, you could quit out to like move Lotrek's drop, right? But it wasn't just resting, and I love that you can do that with just resting. I'm going to go through the pathway to get to No Man's Wharf, but I'm not actually going to do No Man's Wharf in the series since I already have a video on it. So if you really want to see me go through No Man's Wharf, you can go watch that. But I feel like it doesn't really make sense to do that since I also skipped Irothil and the High Wall, Irothil, and what was it, Demon Ruins, I think? Because I already had individual videos for those. Yeah, having that normal Sword Knight there would make it weird if that Great Sword Knight, rather, would make it weird that the other one would drop Sublime Bone Dust, but having the other ones there would do that anyway. It's just weird that a seemingly normal hammer enemy drops a Sublime Bone Dust. I don't know. I don't think it's, like, egregious or anything, but it is definitely strange in my opinion. I believe the old knight weapons are actually pretty strong, but they break really fast. Which I think is a really cool trade-off. Really cool compromise. Dark Souls 2 is really the only game that did anything with durability. And even then, like, it's not super important to pay attention to. I haven't really been paying attention to it at all through this. I know my durability has gotten somewhat low. But later game areas, especially if you're not as upgraded as you should be and whatever, it is very important to have something like repair powder just in case. So I'll probably be grabbing some repair powder once I remember, or once I get to the point where that would actually be useful. Yeah, just a few
random knights here. Not a super eventful hallway, but it definitely feels fitting that these enemies would be here and they don't feel out of place or anything. Though going from this lavish stone masonry to No Man's Wharf is definitely a pretty jarring shift. I feel like it makes sense because there's this whole opulent above ground, and then as soon as you go below ground to where the world won't see, it gets a lot more dingy and not as well taken care of, which I think makes sense and is very fitting for the lore of Drink Lake. It does feel like we went lower than the ocean, right? But No Man's Wharf is like at ocean level, so I guess we really haven't gone that much lower, but it definitely feels like we're significantly lower than we actually are, I think. Well, I mean, in terms of like actual game space, world space, we're probably lower, but lore-wise, we're at ocean level, not below it. It definitely feels like we should be below it, is my point. Oh, there's a statue here in Scholar, actually. I don't remember what's up here in either version. I think the knight armor is up here in vanilla. I don't know if it is in Scholar, though. I don't think this is a mimic. Okay. Yeah, the knight set. That's a... I don't know, that feels like a weird place to put that. Not because that's like a... It feels like it should be a very normal armor set, right? That just kind of exists somewhere, like in a shop or whatever. Not like in this chest in this random hallway. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of a normal armor set, so it makes sense that it's just kind of in this hallway. But in terms of the game itself, it feels kind of special because it's, you know, the knight set. So, I don't know. I guess I'm more indifferent than anything about the placement of that. Anyway, that brings us to the No Man's Wharf, and now I guess it's a good time to go fight this sinner. The Belfry Soul, or rather Belfry Luna, with the Bell Gargoyles and everything, the Belfry Gargoyles, is also another area that I'm going to come back to later. Just because the Gargoyles feel like a mid-game boss, just like... Also, isn't there an enemy down here? Yeah, there is. Just like the Dragon Slayer armor, or the old Dragon Slayer or whatever. I don't remember what it's called in this game. The point is, I'm not going to be fighting either of them until later in the game, because it just feels like they're supposed to be later game bosses, and I don't want to deal with either of them right now. The large club. That's a cool weapon, but I've never actually used it in Dark Souls 2. Most of my playthroughs have been with the Greatsword, but I've also used Broadsword through the whole game. I've used Morningstar through the whole game. I've power stanced broadswords. I've used the Claymore. I've used the Puzzling Stone Sword. I've used the Black Knight Halberd. I haven't used a ton of weapons in this game, especially compared to Dark Souls 1, but I've used a decent number. Like, I've played through this game a fair amount. Not a ton, but, you know, enough. Do I have any flame butterflies? I don't think I do. I don't think so. I should also go burn my Sublime Bone Dust, but... whatever. I'll do that before I actually fight the sinner. I should go level up, actually, huh? Ow. Rude. I need to buy more life gems, too. Jeez. Next bonfire I get to will be Sinner's Rise, and I don't want to teleport from Sinner's Rise. I don't know, it should be fine. Are these explodey guys in here? Yeah. You have to be, like, observant, but also fast to avoid that thing blowing up. Just like the one from earlier, and I feel like that makes sense, especially right after the last one, so you're going to be a lot more wary of a potential enemy type like that. Plus the very unique and very strange sounds that they make that you're not going to really confuse with anything else. So I feel like these guys work pretty well as traps and as enemies. I like these guys. The weird rattling sound. I'm gonna blow up. We run and we explode. God, Happy Souls is so good. If you've played Dark Souls 2 and haven't played... oh my god, or haven't watched Happy Souls, highly recommend. Very, very good. Oh god, look at it. It's fine. What? Ouchie. They don't have the glowy to, like, differentiate them. I don't know if there are the equipment degrading ones in vanilla, but in Scholar there are equipment degrading ones and normal ones. I should also probably explore the entirety of the Bastille and go through the path from the Wharf. I think cat wants out. Anyway, I feel like I should go... Oops. I should go through the path from the wharf. Just because a significant portion of the Bastille is over there. But at the same time, I don't know if it's really worth it. There's a whole Heide Knight over there. Maybe I should. Not right now. But if next time I boot up this game, or at least I want to fight the center now because I have stuff I want to do today. But if next time I boot this up to finish off this video, I'll probably end up doing that. Just decide that it's definitely worth doing. Anyway, point is, actually I didn't really have a point. I would also like to point out that the few times that I've only been ambushed a couple times, there was like just before the Ruin Sentinels. Jeez, my brain sure is working. There was, I don't know, there have been only a few instances where I've been ambushed, right? And a lot of Dark Souls 2 haters, I say that like they have a vendetta for Dark Souls 2, but a lot of people who don't like Dark Souls 2 dislike it because there are a lot of instances where they say that they get ambushed, right? Or there's a lot of gank, or there's, you know, like, that's like one of the biggest complaints you hear about Dark Souls 2. And that's just not really something that I've experienced at all in this playthrough so far, and I think that's pretty obvious. Like, you just don't need to ever really be ambushed or have a gank fight. The only time that'll happen is if you're not really paying attention. I do want to go explore the mansion, or the manor, whatever you want to call it, just because I didn't earlier, and I kind of forgot after I got the key. Lots happened since then, but we can definitely go in here and explore around a bit. There are just a few items. Down in the basement, there is a skeleton that is guaranteed to drop a human effigy, as well as a soul vessel, which is the item that lets you respec. So it's really cool that they give you an item to be able to respec super early. I don't remember how well it actually explains that you're capable of respecking. I don't know what that noise is either. Yeah, but largely there are just a few items here. Yeah, Titanite shards, torches. Oh, it's the pigs. It just sounds weird because it's like echoey inside. I'm not going to worry about the pigs, I don't think. Killing them 500 times seems like something I don't want to do, as much as I want to use the pickaxe eventually. So yeah, the skeleton is guaranteed to drop a human effigy, and it does not respawn unless you use a bonfire ascetic. This is the Lord Vessel. I don't know if that's obvious, but these are like pieces of the Lord Vessel. I believe the Lord Vessel is actually shattered in the final cutscene of Dark Souls 1, if you do the Dark Lord knitting, which I think is really cool. Oops, my controller disconnected again. Need to be a little bit more careful about that. I want to see if, there we go, if the or if the Soul Vessel rather has a description. Will accept your souls. It can allow you reallocation level, so it does tell you that it does that, and it gives you one super early, which I think is really cool. Really just emphasizing the fact that this game really expects you to experiment with your build and try different things, as opposed to Dark Souls 3, where reallocation feels like a concession more than anything, and Dark Souls 1, which entirely disallows it, even in remastered. I really like the fact that Dark Souls 1 doesn't allow you to respec. It feels like it adds a lot to the process of respecking generally. I'm going to go ahead and burn the Sublime Bone Dust, because that is the thing that I will forget first if I don't do it now. It's weird that you can only burn the Sublime Bone Dust in the far fire, but I guess it also kind of makes sense. I don't know. So those three enemies attacking you at the bonfire is a very common complaint that people have with vanilla, and I agree completely. Being able to be attacked at the bonfire is really frustrating and really annoying. One big thing that I definitely don't like about vanilla, and one thing that they changed and made better, or another thing that they changed and made better in Scholar. So we're about to get to the enemies that I said are really annoying. There's like 3 of them for some reason. I don't know if they respawn though. I guess I should figure that out. They are down in the water at the bottom of this elevator. Jeez, dude. Are you okay? Oh my god. Okay. Is there an item? There is. Cool. I have no idea what that is. I don't even remember what it is in Scholar. That's why I hesitate to say that I know a lot about this game, because like I just don't know where a lot of items are. But I've also played through the game several times, and I know where a lot of like enemy ambushes are and stuff like that. So, right, so these guys, they feel like a very, very strong enemy for this point. I guess I am at a +3 instead of a +6 and everything, but I don't know. They just feel more difficult than I feel like they should for this point in the game, and there are too many of them. I hope the water isn't too loud. I hope the game isn't too loud. I haven't actually checked my mixing. I really hope it's not too bad. A Sublime Bone Dust there also. I'm very glad I ended up actually exploring this instead of just running past like I said I might. Ooh, ouch, ouch. No, please. That definitely would have immediately killed me. Ah. That's what I mean by them seeming way too strong, despite their pretty low health, all things considered. Wow. Bellkeeper shield. So are those things Bellkeepers? No, because... I don't know. I have no idea what these things are, like lore-wise. I don't know. Ow. Jeez. Rude. Ow. Rude. Once again. Ugh. Ouch. Okay. Need to heal now? That's not what I wanted to heal with. Everything's fine. I'm good. Oh my god. Jesus Christ. They attack so fast, too. They remind me a lot of the Chain Prisoner, actually, in Dark Souls 1. I have no idea if they respawn, though. The easiest way to get past this whole little gaggle of enemies is you can actually just drop down right here and open the gate with that lever, and things won't chase you. But yeah, I don't even think I have the keys for this right now anyway, so there's not really a point in attempting to explore it. So you can just run straight here, pull this, and then go through, and you really don't need to worry about the enemies. I don't have the key to light up the torches over here. I do have the flame butterfly, which makes that vastly easier, but I don't have the key to do it in the first place, so I guess it doesn't really matter. There is also an item over here, which is a radiant life gem, which I don't typically tend to use because they just take up an extra hotbar slot when you're trying to quickly scroll back to your Estus. Like, I know you can hold down the button, but I don't tend to think about that in the middle of fights and stuff. So it's more hassle than it's worth, in my opinion. Yeah, so this is an instance where unlocking and doing the stuff to light the torches at the side of the arena is very helpful for visibility, but is an interesting trade-off, like visibility for inconvenience. Or, you know, if you want to carry a torch into here to make the fighting harder, while still having that visibility to not have that inconvenience in the first place. Very interesting trade-off. Also, the fact that there is a mechanical difference where you can lock on from further away if you have light. I don't know. I think this is a really cool fight just for the environmental stuff around it. As it's like on its own, it's just a pretty decent fight with a sword person, swordswoman. I think she's a woman. I think they are a woman. Point is, I like this fight both just like as a normal fight, but also the environmental stuff around it I think adds a lot. Pretty easy, but it's also like the first lord that you're intended to fight too, so I don't think it being easy is really necessarily a bad thing. And that will give me a Fragrant Branch, which lets me buy the Claymore, which is the weapon that I will be using for the rest of the game. And Elizabeth Mushroom, which is just a better life gem. Yippee. Okay, and then we return from here. It's weird that you can't rest at the primal bonfires, but I guess it also kind of makes sense. There's not really any reason to. And like lore-wise, it makes sense that they're not the same as normal bonfires. Let's see. I'm gonna level up first, actually. Then I'm gonna go get the Claymore. And then I will switch over to Scholar. Yeah, we get this to 20... 24, 20 should be fine, honestly. I'm gonna give myself a bunch more strength as well. And then maybe some more vigor. Just in case. That feels good. Feels like a good stat distribution right now. Now I'm going to go grab the Claymore and then level it up. And then we can move on to Scholar. Oh, I forgot. I actually have to pay for the Claymore. I think it's only like 10,000 or something. I do really like that one of the or several of the statues actually in this game that you unfreeze are just NPCs. And it lets you, or it unlocks the NPCs as well as unblocking the path that they were guarding, or that they were in front of. So that goes for Strayed, unlocks a bonfire, and unlocks Strayed as an NPC. That also goes for, what is her name? Something Beth? I don't know. She'll probably tell us in a moment. But it unlocks her as an NPC to upgrade your Pyromancy Flame and everything. But it also like unlocks a path over here. I think that's a really cool like double thing. But again, I think that Scholar does it better just because it's easier to access certain areas faster and all that. Not necessarily easier, but the fact that you can do it in a different order, right? If you decide you want to. The options is what I like about how Scholar does it, as opposed to Vanilla, where the easiest way to get one is by going through the center, as opposed to in Scholar, where you can do this first if you really want to. Yeah, take your time. Rosabeth, that's her name. Okay. I guess I should probably give her clothes too. Too bad I don't have the Pyromancer set. The Desert Pyromancer set. Maybe if I get it later. Normally I just give her a helmet so that she'll move back, but I don't know. I don't really have any cute clothes to give her, unfortunately. I'll just give her the imported stuff, I suppose. And then once you rest, she'll return to Majula. Once we open this, I think it's really cool that we get ambushed while this gate is opening. So like normally you can take out enemies, oh my god, while or before you have to end up waiting for a gate to open. And in fact, in some instances you kind of have to. But here, you're actually forced to deal with the enemies while you're waiting for the gate to open. And then once the gate actually does open, there's even another enemy. In this case, it's only a basilisk, so it's not particularly dangerous, though Petrify does instantly kill you, just like how Curse does in Dark Souls 1. They drop a battle axe? That's weird. And then there's a bonfire here, so that you can just warp here instead of having to wait. And it also makes it really easy to farm the basilisk, because the basilisk can drop a bunch of different infusion stones, which is very nice. I haven't rested. I need to rest so I can get my Estus back. This is not super important. I think this is a, yeah, this is Flask Shroud, which is very useful. I'm not going to rest there, actually. I think there are enemies in these cells. Maybe not. I don't know. Nothing important, anyway. But it is cool that you can get up there, and that it's mirrored on both sides. Though it's weird that you can't get up on the top floor on the opposite side, I think. I do kind of wish there was a way up there somehow. At least after you opened the gate, you know? It's like it could still have that moment of like forcing you to deal with the enemies while the gate is opening. But you could also go up there and maybe would have given them another spot to put items or whatever. Would have just felt nice to be able to get up there. Okay. These enemies do inflict poison. I don't know if I've gotten hit by one yet. But that is pretty obvious with their corpse weapons glowing green. I forgot they throw shit at you. I don't know if I should censor that. I don't know. I guess if I don't curse too much, that'll be worth it, but I tend to try not to curse in my videos, but I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Plus, for comedic effect, I feel like saying throwing shit at you is significantly funnier and more entertaining than saying throwing stuff at you. Or throwing rocks. Anyway. I don't know if there are any of these guys that do throw things in Scholar. I don't remember if they do. But, you know, they're here. They're weird bloated bellies that definitely don't look like anything else that could at all be even potentially suggestive. I don't even know what you're referring to. They look very strange enemy design, but like in a good, weird, creepy way. Not in like a, what the? Okay, so to get the claymore, we actually have to follow the left here. I don't remember if the trees make noises in this version. Like if you hit them. There are certain trees where in Scholar, if you hit them, they will distract the enemies because they'll make a noise. But I don't know if... Ow? Those trees actually distract the enemies in this version. But there are these invisible enemies that you can't lock onto, which is a very interesting and, in my opinion, fun challenge, but could definitely be annoying, and I definitely understand how it could be annoying. I don't remember how much the Claymore is. I think it's 7,000.
Like
Yeah.
what you did.
Come on. Just sell me weapons, please.
You,
I like this guy's story. It's interesting, and I think it's cool and like weirdly scary, but... Oh, it's only 4,000. Okay, cool. There we go.
farewell.
And I have bones. I feel like I use Homeward Bones less in this than Dark Souls 1, partially because you can warp from the beginning, which I don't like nor dislike it. It just kind of lends to a different style of world creation, and I prefer how Dark Souls 1 did it. But I don't know, that's not really something that's worth delving too much into. I don't prefer it. I don't necessarily dislike it though. Anyway, I don't remember what I was talking about. That's fine. I have the Claymore. Yippee. Alright, I've actually gotten to the point where I can explore the rest of the Bastille. So we can actually, like, explore and finish. Okay, so I guess there's the Heide Knight here. Right, this leads here. Okay, sorry, I confused myself as to where I was exactly. But you can actually jump down here from just before the Sinner's Rise. That room with the exploded guys, the invisible, or the illusory wall, rather. Jesus Christ. You can jump down here, so you don't actually have to go through the No Man's Wharf, but that is like the intended path to get here. So I figured it would make sense to go through there. There we go. Jeez. Not a difficult fight, but I guess it is when you're bad at the game. Wonder if there's anything here. It feels like there should be. There's an item. Human effigy and a soul of a brave warrior. I haven't really been paying attention too much to what I've been picking up. I've just been collecting things. And I don't know if I should really be paying attention. Unless an item is like particularly difficult to get or whatever. I don't know. There are a lot more explosive barrels here, if I remember correctly, in Scholar. I don't know. I'll analyze Scholar when I get there. For now, this is just kind of like a few dogs and a couple enemies. There are archers here, also in Scholar, which I feel like affect this area quite a bit. Wow, I am really going through my Estus. I have a lot of life gems. I should be using them. I have 69. I can't use my life gems. I have to stay at this number for the rest of the game. Oh wow, I'll try Nitro. That lets me get my Claymore to +6, so that's really nice. And then, obviously, the Estus Flask Shard is very nice. Yeah, this is why... I wonder if the Pyromancer guy is, like, supposed to kick the barrel down at you. It doesn't, usually. But I wonder if that's how you're supposed to get into McDuff's workshop. I don't even know if it is capable of doing that, because, like, going up the stairs... Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it is supposed to kick it down and that's how you're supposed to do that, but it doesn't seem... I don't know. I've never seen that happen, so maybe not. There we go. This is much easier from this direction, even though you need to go this direction, or the other direction, rather, first, to even get here in the first place. Because, you know, obviously you have to open the gate from that side. It feels like it's designed for this direction, once again, but I don't know. Who knows? The Bastille is strange. God, it's nice having a weapon that I actually like using. I don't know, I like using the broadsword, but the Claymore is usually one of my favorite weapons in all the games, and so far that's true of this one. I've only used the Claymore a tiny bit in this game compared to the others, but I think there are explodey guys in here. Never mind. Maybe that's only in Scholar. I should stop making assumptions based on my knowledge of Scholar. It definitely feels like there should be more in here. Is that it? Is that everything that's in here? Oh no, there is exploding guys. Okay. I thought this was just another door out to the same spot. Yeah, alluring skulls are probably really useful for like big groups, especially with dogs and stuff. But this is what the antiquated key is for? Interesting. Oh, pardon me. Lots of dogs. I know you can knock this. This one being able to be knocked down is way more obvious than the one in Majula. So I wonder if the game expects you to like find this first, and then realize, oh wait, there's a well in Majula, maybe it has something like that, and then to see the tiny rock that is significantly less obvious. I don't know though, because that is still like way more obvious than the one in Majula, but it is also entirely feasible that they just expected you to realize that you could knock down the rock in Majula. I very rarely come over here, just because there's not really much over here that is useful in most playthroughs. I've only come over here once or twice. I feel like I should have a torch right now. I guess I did get a few flame butterflies, so that does make sense. I think these are real chests. See if they're trapped. A parrying dagger, pretty useless. I think the buckler is probably better than the parrying dagger. Not because it's easier to parry with or whatever. Can you break the metal chests? I don't know if you can only break the twin chests. The twin blade is here. Is it here in Scholar too? Oh, I should do a twin blade playthrough. Anyway, level design. This series is about level design. Huh. What the heck? Where does this lead out to? Is this? Oh, I didn't know that was there. That's actually really cool. That's just a way back to get to where you came from. I'm glad I decided to explore this in this video. I wonder if there's like an illusory wall around here somewhere. It definitely feels like... Did that ghost just go through the wall? What was that? Anyway, this feels like an area that would have an illusory wall, but I don't feel like mashing my face. Oh, okay, well, never mind. Not exactly an illusory wall, but, you know, same concept, I suppose. Weird that there's just an item up here. Feels like there would be an archer up here or something to incentivize you to come up there, so you don't have to notice the item from the other side. But, like, even if you didn't, I feel like you would go up the ladder anyway. I don't know. Okay, is that it? That might actually be it. I remember this chunk of the level being slightly bigger, but I don't know really why. Alright. Anyway. I think now is the time to switch back over, or to switch over to Scholar. And we can get up to this point in Scholar and yeah, go from there. Alright, now we're in Scholar. I don't know how much of Scholar I'm going to show off. I think I'll just specifically point out, differences and stuff that I think are major enough to warrant pointing out. I don't know. I guess it would kind of make sense to... I don't know. We'll see. There's probably going to be a lot of stuff that I want to point out anyway. Alright. Gonna go fight the Cyclops. I assume this shouldn't be any different from normal. Also, the night starts with 10 life gems. I completely forgot about that. Normally, I start with the healing wares. Just because most of the other starting gifts aren't super useful unless you have something specific planned for them. I don't have anything planned for the aesthetic, but I will probably end up using it somewhere. I'm not really sure where a good place to use it would be, though. I don't know. Maybe I'll use it on, like, the Lost Center just to show off some differences with New Game Plus and all that. Because the center fight does actually change pretty dramatically. I'm pretty sure all the stats and numbers are pretty much exactly the same between the games. The only real difference is, like, enemy layout and stuff, which is kind of the focus
of this series anyway, so that works out. Makes it easier for me, but, you know. This feels easier. I don't know why. I don't know if that's just me or if it's like easier, but that did feel easier. I don't know, because I didn't get hit once and it felt like I was rolling farther. I'm pretty sure the stats and like numbers and stuff are all the same. It's probably just a me thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the same. I don't know. Maybe I just got insanely good at the game overnight. Maybe Scholar controls subtly differently somehow. I don't know. Because it still, I'm pretty sure it still has the 8 direction snapping, right? It feels like it. I don't know. I completely forgot to grab the effigy up here in vanilla as well. I'm pretty sure there's an effigy up here also in vanilla. At least there's one up here in Scholar, obviously. So the main and potentially only difference with things betwixt is that there's a statue over here in front of this one, which leads to the beach with the 2 Cyclops. And I don't know if you can actually access the Cyclops right off the bat in vanilla, but I actually think having a statue here is pretty good regardless, because, you know, being able to access the Cyclops, if that's a thing that you can do immediately in vanilla, I feel like sends the wrong message about difficulty for this game. But also having the statue there here in Scholar gives you something to like mull on, like, oh, what is this? What could this be? And then once you get a branch, you're like, oh, okay, so now I can go back and see what that's about. Even if you don't happen to come across another statue by the time that you get your first branch, which could potentially be as early as Malentia, or even right after you beat the Pursuer, right? So I think that having the statue there is pretty cool. I like what they did with the statues and Scholar, barring the shaded ruins. Just because there are so many statues there and there's no points to clearing out most of them, but one of them just happens to have the Fang key, but can also attack you at the bonfire. So like, it's not like every single change Scholar made was good, but generally I think Scholar is the better version and is largely a, you know, most of the changes are largely, if not entirely, positive. Even the somewhat potentially contentious ones, like the fragrant branches, right? Which again, having more fragrant branches, like I said, also increases potential paths through the game, which I think is super cool, and is something that it gives more options for progression than vanilla had, which I very much like. Something I didn't really mention about the controls is I am personally partial to B button jumping, so double tapping the dodge button after running to jump. I prefer that. I feel like clicking in the stick clicking in the stick is very clunky and doesn't feel super good to do, and just double tapping the run button feels very smooth and simple. And there are very, very few times that I've actually like died because I failed to press the button properly or whatever, or like because I wanted to roll but I ended up jumping or whatever. But I do understand why they moved it to stick click. It does decrease the chance of accidentally jumping when you're trying to roll or whatever. But I don't know. That's just a personal preference where I fall pretty handily outside the norm. So pretty much immediately we're going to see some pretty major differences between Vanilla and Scholar. And I think the Forest of Fallen Giants, the first time I played through it in Vanilla after playing through Scholar, it was like, wow, this this is so much less. And at the time, it was like, okay, I can see why people would prefer this. I see why people like having fewer enemies. It's a different experience, but it's not an inherently worse one, in my opinion. And then, you know, all the other differences between Vanilla and Scholar, I started, you know, like actually noticing them. And I started liking Scholar even more. But yeah, so immediately off the bat, we have an enemy here who actually attacks you if you enter the cave from this direction. And then we also have this Cyclops, which I did say that having the Heide Knights scattered about the early game is like a really good way to add optional difficult challenges. But then like Dark Souls, or sorry, Scholar has the Cyan Knights, but right, they're not guaranteed to drop any loot or anything. But it is still cool to have those optional harder challenges. And with the Cyclops here, not only do I think it's a good optional difficult challenge to have right out the gate, right? Because you could have already encountered one of these, or this could be your first time ever seeing a Cyclops, but I think the size is imposing enough that it should be pretty obvious that this thing is going to be a lot more difficult than your standard enemy, right? So if you're not confident in your ability, you're probably going to avoid it anyway. But, okay. um, but like, it's also in the water, which really feels like it gives so, like, actual use to this half of this entire area, right? And it also draws you closer to the bonfire, so you're more likely to see it, as opposed to in vanilla when I said that I would probably have missed it if I hadn't been exploring or if I hadn't, you know, played the game before. And while the Cyclops isn't guaranteed to drop loot, it does have a pretty decent chance to drop, like, life gems and stuff, I think. So it's not fruitless, and it drops a decent chunk of souls, right? Not a ton, but enough that it's, like, a nice bonus if you do decide to go out of your way to fight it. And it respawns. While it's, like, I don't know, that might feel weird, that a optional difficult enemy encounter does respawn. It also gives you the opportunity to, like, try again if you felt like you didn't fight it very well, which I feel like the ascetics also do. I don't know if I'm the only person who likes that kind of thing, but I like being given another chance if I feel like my winning attempt wasn't very good. But that's not super common across challenges as a whole, but for Dark Souls specifically, like if I do really badly, I do think it is fun to re-attempt an encounter, especially after just having beaten it with subpar capability. I think... Okay, so the enemy laying here looks like it was just moved up. I do recall an enemy attacking me when grabbing that, despite taking out all the enemies I did, but I guess that was a false memory. I didn't get that item up on the ledge in vanilla, I don't think. But anyway, immediately off the bat, there are significantly more enemies in Scholar, but not to a point where I feel like it's unfair, just to a point where it feels like it's actually giving you encounters to, well, encounter, instead of only a couple enemies, to just fill out the level, right? So Scholar, in my opinion, feels much more crafted and much more intentional. Also having all these enemies, like there are way more enemies here, right? But they're also all laying down, which is basically going to force you to notice that enemies won't aggro immediately, but more importantly that you need to pay attention. Because like these are very obviously enemies, and there are other enemies that you see laying down before this, so it's not like you're just gonna have no chance to know that these are enemies your first time coming through here. You're almost definitely going to know that these are enemies if you're actually paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to get attacked by a bunch of enemies at once, right? Which really hammers home that lesson of you need to be observant of your environment, right? Not just of enemies around corners, but also enemies hiding in plain sight, which is really something that Dark Souls 2 Scholar is kind of the only one that really does that. Like, Dark Souls 3 does it a little bit, and vanilla does also do it a little bit, but not nearly to the same degree that Scholar does. Also, having the broken straight sword under that tree feels a little tongue-in-cheek. I've never noticed that before. Also, having the enemy climb down the ladder, Jesus, here feels like it's trying to tell you that you shouldn't ever let your guard down, even when you're doing something as simple as climbing a ladder. But I don't know, that's not too major of a thing. Oops. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to knock you over. I don't remember what this item is. And if you don't want to deal with all these enemies, because of how long it takes them to stand up after you run past them, you can actually pretty easily just sprint straight to the fog wall and not deal with any of them. I've done that many, many times through playing this game. Yeah, just this one encounter really shows, I feel like, how different Scholar is. And in a lot of ways, I feel like it's better or in a lot of ways, I feel like it's better, just straight up better, right? Like this encounter, I feel like is so much more full of not realism, but life, right? It's like, oh, okay, this is something that these enemies would probably actually do. They're just gonna lay there. They're probably not gonna all be up and wandering around or standing in hallways. And of course, there are some that are just standing in hallways because that's just kind of how the level design works, and it wouldn't make sense for all of them to be just laying face down on the ground the first time you see them. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it really just adds a lot to the game, both in terms of game design, but also in terms of atmosphere. And it's like I do not understand preferring vanilla. I guess if it was the first one you played, but even then, like, and then there's the enemy around the corner here, which it really felt like vanilla should have had also, but it just didn't. I don't know. Also having 3 enemies in that room, one hiding behind boxes, I feel like is really clever because there's a ton of clutter in this room. And in the original, there's 2 enemies that are just out in the open. But in Scholar, they actually use the environment because like it does feel like in a small room like that, an enemy would end up being obscured, especially with so much clutter, right? And then Scholar actually capitalizes on that. And it doesn't even necessarily feel like it's intentionally trying to obscure itself. It feels like it just so happens to be obscured because the room is cluttered. Like, I know it's standing in the corner, but it's an undead. What else is it going to do? Yeah, okay. I remember there being more enemies up here. Maybe it's just because I run past a lot of them all the time. But having the archer there, definitely, I feel like adds a lot to that encounter as well, like I said, when I was going through vanilla. And then, of course, we have the same enemy over here. But down there, I feel like adds a lot. There's also a lot there different that I feel like is just better in a lot of ways. So let me rest real quick and we can head down there. I'm also going to buy a few fire bombs for later. These will be important. Just going to buy like 10. That should be fine. Also, moving the enemy out here, first of all, gives a lot more purpose to this whole area up here. Because normally, or in vanilla rather, it's just this one chest. And it leaves this whole area feeling extremely empty. But it also makes it a lot more surprising and is, once again, like, hey, pay attention. Never feel safe. Always, always, always look for enemies. And that's something that vanilla, I feel like, could have communicated better, but also utilized a lot more. But I don't know. I feel like at this point I'm just kind of beating a dead horse. A lot of enemies I've noticed in vanilla are a lot more out in the open as well. So it leads to forced group encounters rather than potentially avoidable group encounters. And while Scholar does have its fair share of forced group encounters, and I don't think group encounters on their own are bad, I think the potentially avoidable ones are also really cool. And I really like that Scholar takes advantage of that and uses them to its advantage a lot more and has more of them and everything. I believe just overall there are also more items here. There are also obviously a lot of different enemies. I don't know if they're strictly more. Like it does still have the wandering undead, which first of all add a lot of atmosphere and I think work pretty well as just normal encounters down here. But there's also an old Ironclad Knight down here, which is very, very fitting, I feel like, especially for the spot that it's in. Both as a... Oh, there are 2 old Ironclad Knights. One as a teaching moment and one as a... I don't know, just like adding variety down here. Because a bunch of infantry surrounding... a bunch of infantry surrounding a knight feels pretty realistic in that way. But also this guy, once again, hammering home that you need to pay attention to your environment because it won't always be safe. There we go. And this entire little hallway here is completely empty aside from that one item in vanilla, which definitely didn't feel right. So I think putting an enemy there, protecting it, makes a lot of sense, especially showing a unique interaction that you might not experience otherwise. Because I feel like trying to get behind the old Ironclad Knights is on its own pretty difficult. And also not really something that most new players are going to attempt to do. Like, if you're coming from Dark Souls 1, obviously I think you would try to get behind them, but... Oh god. I feel like the giant turtle shell might dissuade a lot of Dark Souls 1 veterans from trying to get behind them, though. I don't know. I didn't really have that experience because I didn't come from Dark Souls 1. I played this game first. And I definitely didn't know that they had the backslam attack until I encountered this one, which I didn't do on my first, or yeah, my first time through the level, because this area is kind of hidden. You have to like jump down here. I do actually really like that you have to jump down into this area rather than just like walking into it. I feel like that adds a lot to the whole exploration thing. It just feels good to find this area. This feels like a special area, you know what I mean? And we have the fire longsword, which is exactly the same in vanilla, which can be pretty good early on, especially. But I won't be using it. And then we don't get ambushed by 2 random hollow infantry, which I don't know. Again, I don't know if that was my fault in vanilla, but the exact same thing happened last time I played. So I want to say that that is a scripted thing that you can't really do anything to avoid unless you like see them on top of a cliff or whatever. I don't know. Having an enemy behind the way to progress feels better than what vanilla did. And this is, I don't know, like I don't know if it's strictly better, but in my mind it just makes more sense from that it would be sitting on the stairs rather than just sitting randomly against this wall. I know there are a lot of hollows randomly sitting against walls, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just biased towards Scholar, but I really do think that a lot of the minor things that Scholar did are like really good, and I wouldn't say they add a lot, but they add enough to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's better. I like that more, rather than just, oh, Scholar is better, so obviously everything it does is better, right? I don't know. I hope that's not how it's coming across, because that's really not what I mean. It's not Scholar is better, therefore the things it does are better. It's the things Scholar changed are, in my opinion, for the better. So therefore, I think Scholar is better. And I feel like that's an important distinction to make. Anyway. I believe the other guy, yeah, ran up that ladder. Which, climb that ladder fast, Jesus. Here we go. I'm pretty sure the enemies here are, if not exactly the same, are extremely similar. But there is one more enemy here in Scholar. That really feels like... Oh god, I got shot in the head. You're gonna be a little bit careful, I think. There we go. Also, there's an item down there. I'm not actually sure what that is. Oh, they didn't add an enemy. They just moved one. There was one there in vanilla. I think it's a different enemy type, actually. It's an archer instead of just a normal infantryman. But they moved him up into that cave, which I think makes more sense. Both because it makes it a threat through the whole part of the level rather than that one little platform where it's barely a threat anymore. But also it gives something here rather than just a random item at the end of a tunnel. Though it being in here with Kale is kind of weird. Like, why is it not attacking Kale? I don't know. And like I said, when we were playing through vanilla, we encountered this old Ironclad Knight next to some explosive barrels before we actually get to the shortcut that utilizes the explosive barrels, which I feel like makes the shortcut a lot more obvious before you encounter it rather than being obvious after you encounter it, which, I don't know, isn't necessarily better, but I do really like the interaction of being able to blow up the old Ironclad Knight by just having it swing its hammer there. And like, obviously that's also an option in vanilla later on where you encounter the other old Ironclad Knight, but it's easier to do there also without blowing yourself up. Okay, and then we have the Pursuer encounter, which is effectively exactly the same, but the arena has more going on with it. There are enemies up here that will aggro once the Pursuer isn't here. There are items up here for you to collect that you can collect before the Pursuer even gets here. Oh, I've never actually ended up accidentally hitting an enemy while fighting the Pursuer. Oh god. That's never happened. Okay. I don't think that's a bad thing that can happen. Being able to fight the boss early in a more difficult environment. Like, it's already more difficult because you've had to go through a good chunk of level. You weren't expecting to fight a boss like this, right? And, like, you don't have the ballista and all that. But having the option
with other enemies present, I think is also really cool. Though I do like the fact that they don't actually aggro without hitting them until the pursuer itself is dead. I do really like that. I have gold pine resin. I could use that. I forgot about that. I feel like it would make sense to use that on this encounter. It's also kind of difficult to use in the middle of a boss fight, though. And if you don't know it's coming, you know. I got it from when I was fighting the Cyclops at the beginning. I still haven't used the gold pine resin in vanilla, though. That was the attack that I learned how to parry first. It's extremely easy to parry, and is extremely useful to parry, because he uses it a lot when you're at a distance. And you can parry him in front of a ballista. I think initially, when I first played this game, I wanted to fight him without using the ballista. I don't remember, though. I'm pretty sure I did end up killing him using the ballista in my first playthrough. Alright. Yeah, Pursuer's not particularly difficult, even in this environment. But that's also partially because I've played this game so much. When I first started playing this game, even in my second and third playthrough, like, I wasn't able to beat the Pursuer here. But I still thought it was super cool that I even had the chance, even though I wasn't, like, skilled enough to do so. Oops. Ow. Oh, God. These enemies are more threatening. There we go. And now we have the souls to buy the Fragrant Branch of Yore and the Claymore, which is very nice. And Leningrass key. So don't have to worry about not being able to get the Claymore for a long time or anything. Also going to buy this because I did that in vanilla and I want the Chloranthy ring. One thing I want to point out is coming here earlier, like obviously I do less damage right now than I did when I got here in vanilla. And like that's just, I think, a cool thing that you can do. Like, it's not like you're locked to not coming here until you have more damage. While in vanilla, like, you're not going to be able to come here until you have a decent chunk more damage, generally. Like, obviously, you're not required to have a certain amount of damage to come here, ever. But it's just a lot harder to be able to get here until, you know, you're able to beat the last center. And, like, as much as I could probably beat the last center with a +0 broadsword if I really tried. That's not really the point. Most people won't, while some people might, in their first playthrough, buy the Fragrant Branch, come back over here, and go straight here, like, in their first playthrough, right? And I feel like that's just not really much of an option, especially as part of a first playthrough in vanilla. But this whole ambush sequence, I think, is exactly the same. Like, exact same number of enemies and everything. Oh, maybe there are more. I don't know. Ouch. Okay. I don't want to get poisoned. Yeah. I guess it's entirely feasible to just run past as well once the basilisk moves. There we go. I don't want to run past, but this gives me more room to deal with them. Oh, God. Here we go. And then the basilisk on its own obviously isn't really a threat. Cool. I have an entire Estus Flask shard that I need to use. 2 now, I think? I'm pretty sure this is an Estus Flask shard. Yeah. I should probably go use those real quick. It is the next day, and I don't remember at all what I was doing. Why is this closed? What? Oh, you just have to come pull this lever, despite being on the opposite side of the room of this door. Oh, I see. That's why those are there. Okay, I didn't know that. What the heck? What are those guys? Isn't that a lion warrior? Wait, what are you? I have no idea. I've never seen this guy before. I have no idea where he came from. He has a lot of health, too. I like how his weapon is just an anvil on a stick. That's actually pretty funny.
Oh, they do throw rocks.
Oh god. I don't know why, I just didn't remember them throwing rocks in Scholar. But they do definitely throw rocks at you. Oh god, that's not good. Whoa, a Ferris Lockstone. I don't think that was here in Vanilla. Unless it was, but regardless, that's very nice actually. Especially since the Doors of Ferris is coming up too. I didn't even think about that. It's weird that the first item that you see protected by one of these guys is just a fading soul, which I think is worth like 50 souls, and then you get a soul of a proud knight and a human effigy for the next one. That's kind of weird, because it seems like the first one is meant to bait you into like engaging with that, right? Rather than being a reward for dealing with it. While those two are very clearly rewards. And like it kind of makes sense because there are 4 of them instead of just 2. But it's still 2 items instead. I don't know. It's weird that it would reward you for dealing with them, even though the first time it, very much did not reward you for dealing with them. Seems kind of strange. While I'm here, I'm also going to go in the mansion. I think items are a little bit different, but I don't think it's that consequential. A Ferris Lockstone. Okay, maybe it is consequential. It seems like they wanted to make the Doors of Ferris like a more viable, or not even necessarily the Doors of Ferris, the Grave of Saints too, to be more like viable PvP locations. Also, this house is so weirdly laid out. Imagine having a house that's laid out like this. It's just hallways on the first floor. Jeez. Anyway, it seems like they wanted you to engage more with Ferris Lockstones, especially early on. Which makes sense because the Grave of the Saints, or Grave of Saints or whatever, is a pretty early game area, all things considered. And so is the Doors of Ferris, actually. 2 very early game areas that you're basically only allowed to engage with later on in the vanilla. Admittedly, A+3 is maybe a little bit overkill for the last giant, but it's fine. Range is very nice to have. I think that's one of the things I like most about the Claymore, just the range it has. But also not being, oh my god, not being cumbersome like an Ultra Greatsword. I don't know, it feels better than most other Greatswords, and that's entirely subjective, and I could not tell you why that is the case. I just prefer using it over most Greatswords. I mean, it's the Claymore, right? I know you can hit these explosive barrels with this. Yeah, there we go. Oops. I don't know if you can do that in vanilla, but I know you can do that in Scholar, and I did that on accident in my first playthrough. And it kills an enemy or 2 over there, which I think is great. Overall, Scholar definitely has a lot more interactions like that, like environmental interactions and stuff. It's great. There we go. That's how you avoid that effectively. I know the enemies here are different. I think there was one behind, or that started behind you in vanilla. But also, these enemies are a lot more aggressive in Scholar. I don't think they actually come out to attack you in vanilla. If they do, and I'm just completely misremembering. Oops. But there are also a lot more inside in vanilla. And it doesn't really feel like an ambush. It just feels like you're locked in an area and you need to go through a hallway to get out, right? But in Scholar, it definitely feels a lot more like an ambush because you're actively attacked. I don't know. It feels more like, oh, okay, I'm getting attacked by these enemies in this area that I was told to go into by this guy who I implicitly trusted, right? While, I don't know, it doesn't really feel like an ambush in vanilla. I don't know if that's completely off base, but I don't know, that's just kind of how I perceive it. Yeah, there are a lot fewer enemies here in vanilla. Or, I mean in Scholar, rather. Which seems to be against what most people think, where Scholar is a lot more full of ganks and stuff. Because it does have a lot more enemies, but I don't know, in portions where you don't really have the ability to nullify the ganks, there are significantly fewer enemies. So when you're forced to fight multiple enemies at once, it's going to be fewer enemies than it would be, you know, in an area where you just failed to notice enemies and got ganked because of that. Oh no, I missed. I don't think it matters, but... Will they come down, or will they just throw firebombs at me? Okay, well this one came down on accident. That works. Okay, looks like this one came down on purpose. And I don't think that one can throw firebombs, because that was the one that was behind the other ones. There we go. So this ambush is very different. Will this guy aggro? I don't think so. This ambush is very different in Scholar compared to Vanilla. Obviously in Vanilla, there's one enemy up here, and then one enemy drops down behind you, and there's one more enemy that's like laying down on the ground that you might not see. But here, you collect the item, and you turn around, and then 4 enemies drop behind you. But they very clearly drop a one at a time. And like it's a very narrow walkway, so you're very clearly supposed to fight them one at a time. And if anything, I feel like it introduces, or it's a pretty interesting and unique fight, because you have to deal with 4 enemies, one after another, after another, after another. And like that kind of interaction doesn't really happen very often, because even when there are like narrow hallways and stuff, enemies will be like attacking through each other. And it's not like that doesn't happen there. Obviously the enemies can and frequently do attack through each other. But I don't know, because of the time that they're staggered out, it definitely feels like a time crunch to take them out one at a time as quickly as possible as well. It is possible to run back down and past them and then drop out down here with them following you down, which is usually how I deal with them. But even then, like, you're not experiencing that somewhat unique combat encounter, but you are still dealing with the encounter in a unique way. And I think it's really cool that it's even possible to do that in multiple ways. I don't know. Dark Souls 2 has a very interesting and, in my opinion, very, very good way of setting up encounters that lets you deal with them in a lot of unique ways. And also has one, in my opinion, obviously intended way that feels like not necessarily the best way to deal with it, but the most the way that the developers expected you to and built around, right? Also in Scholar we have the old Iron Knight instead of a random hollow soldier guy. Not sure why this guy is just chilling on the elevator, but you know. Do they add this in Scholar? Why? Huh. Did they add that in Scholar, or is that there in Vanilla and I just didn't see it for whatever reason? I actually have no idea. More stamina will be very nice to have. Yeah, like I said, +3 might be a little bit overkill for the last giant, but it's fine. And then out here, we have the Cyan Knight, who I really like to parry, but I also suck at parrying in this game, especially without a shield. Buckler, I think, has the most parry frames of anything I have. Usually I'll use, like, the Crimson Parma, but there we go, easy. The Buckler makes that extremely easy, wow. But again, like, this is kind of partially the replacement for the Heide Knights, a couple of random Cyan Knights that don't respawn. But also, they add a couple items out here in Scholar, which really feels like they should have been out here in the first place. If not items, and I don't know, some enemy, a couple old Ironclad Knights, something. Also, the Grand Lance is a very, very fun weapon. If you haven't used it before, I highly recommend it. I did a playthrough with that, and that was extremely fun. I'm going to go through Hides and the No Man's Wharf real quick, just because I want a couple more levels before going into the area where I get invaded by Dennis, because Dennis is really annoying. I don't even think burning an effigy prevents him from spawning, which is really stupid. And like it kind of makes sense because I have certain NPC encounters that they like set up in specific areas. But at the same time, like if I specifically want to prevent an NPC from spawning, I think I should be allowed to do that. I also might be completely wrong, but I know there are some NPCs where burning an effigy doesn't prevent them from spawning in the first place. Like I don't think burning an effigy will prevent Forlorn from spawning or whatever. Also, like I said, moving all the Heide Knights here makes sense to me because it's Heide's Tower of Flame, and they are Heide Knights, and like the way that they change the level, um, and how like the difficulty of the bosses reflects the state of the level, I think is really, really cool. I really like the Heide Knights being here. I know that's a complaint that some people have about Scholar over Vanilla, or prefer Vanilla over Scholar in that aspect, but I don't know. I really like the Heide Knights here. Other than that, not much really changes in this level as far as I know. I mean, this guy I don't think drops a Sublime Bone Dust. Instead, you get it in the hallway between here and the Wharf, but still. Because he really does just feel like a normal enemy, right? And then there's another one in front of the Dragonrider, too. So, I mean, they moved one, or they made one in front of the Dragonrider instead of the big guy that you, like, have a duel with who feels like a more special enemy. If for no other reason than you specifically duel with him. If they had put the Hammer Knight, if they had replaced that guy with a Greatsword with the Hammer Knight from here, in Vanilla, I think that would have made a lot more sense. But because they didn't, Scholar just feels like it makes more sense to me. I know you can get the enemies to fall off of ledges here, but not particularly sure how. Actually, I'm not going to pull the levers because I think it'll be funny to do the cheese strat. And then here, the other two don't actually attack you until this guy is dead or if you run away. They don't just randomly attack you while you're fighting this guy like they do in Vanilla. I don't know how common that happens, but that's what happened to me, so. And now we gotta fight them on their own. Ow. Suffering from skill issue, I guess. Now, having one of the strongest version of this enemy here in front of the boss, I also feel like makes sense because he's like guarding the Dragonrider, and obviously the Dragonrider would want the strongest guardian possible, rather than, you know, some random greatsword guy that has less health than all the others for no reason. Despite seemingly being the strongest, and that's why the game wants you to duel at them. I don't know. Vanilla is strange. Okay, be careful. I just want the Ring of Binding, too. Oh, okay, that works. Alright, I think it's 7 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Roll. And then stand here. And then he turns, and the music just stops. That's so funny. Also, one weird change, they moved the bonfire over to the right, and they also moved the girl closer to the window. I think they moved the girl closer to the window. I don't know why they moved things up here. That doesn't really make sense. But, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they were expecting people to kick her out the window. Oops. Sorry, I didn't mean to rip your spine out. Jesus. So the whole area is actually pretty different. A lot of the enemies are the same. There's a lot of... Jeez. There's a lot of old Iron Knights and stuff. So there are pretty similar enemies and layouts. There's still the Archer. But largely, the area as a whole is very different. There are more old Iron Knights in certain areas. The enemies are moved completely. Even like down here, right? There are skeletons instead of normal soldiers. Which I think is really cool. Like world building wise. I don't know. I don't know how much it really affects things, but I like it. They don't revive like the first, or well, I guess the first skeletons you see in Dark Souls 1 don't revive. I don't know if any skeletons revive. No, there are necromancers in the Huntsman's Copse, I forgot. Anyway. Yeah, this area is pretty different from Vanilla. I think off the top of my head, one of like the most different areas experientially. As different as basically this
whole version of the game is, this area is like especially different. So the very first thing I'm going to do is run up here so that they don't end up dropping down and I don't have to deal with 4 of these guys at once, only 3. And we can get them to hit the explosive barrels and damage themselves and consequently each other, which is great. Oh god. Hey. Oh, did all the explosive barrels go? Darn. Oh my god. Jesus. Okay, dealing with multiple of these guys at once is not as difficult as I was expecting it to be, and honestly. Like, normally I'll actually have these 3 drop down and just kite them all around. All 4 of them, like, between the areas down there. But doing that like that, especially with the explosive barrels up here, isn't that difficult. It is probably easier, honestly. That's kind of what I grabbed the fire bombs for, but I didn't even need them. Which is arguably even cooler, but regardless. Not sure why there's an archer in a building. I think he put away a bow. That's pretty funny. And an effigy. And then over here, of course, we have one more old Ironclad Knight. Yeah, so normally I will like go through this building and have them like go single file through the small doors, so I can deal with them one at a time instead of all at once. And that makes it significantly easier to deal with 4 of them. But when it's just 3 with the explosive barrels, like I said, it's not that bad. And then, obviously, all the... Where's the archer? I thought there was an archer on the opposite side. Did I just entirely misremember that? I specifically remember there being an archer right here. Oh, there's Dennis. Can I light this while Dennis is here? Okay, good. So I don't have to run all the way back if I die. Jesus. Okay, so far so good. Normally I suck at this fight. Oh god. Ow. I don't know why I remember him doing... That's why. Oh my god. He does so much damage. Okay, I need to heal. Please. Cool. I'm sure you can pretty easily get him to fall off. That was a lot less difficult than I was anticipating. If I hadn't leveled my health, I probably would have died there, but, you know, still came out on top. That's what really matters. Yeah, so that area is dramatically different. But I think, I don't know. I don't think I have a, I don't know. I was going to say I don't think I have a preference for either of them, but maybe I do prefer the Scholar version despite Dennis being there. Just because of the first 3 old Ironclad Knights and, like, I don't know, the skeletons. I don't know. I don't dislike this area for sure. I think it's really cool. I used to think the old Ironclad Knights were frustrating to deal with, but evidently that's simply not the case. Yeah, so over here in Vanilla, there were just a few hollow soldiers, but they were replaced with the Royal Knights, which, I don't know, I'm used to this, so I think it's better. They are stronger, and after beating the first boss, it makes sense that they would want to introduce you to stronger enemies, just to show you, like, as the game goes on, enemies are going to get stronger, though that feels pretty obvious, right? But, like, the first boss is a pretty major progression point, so it makes sense. It would be like, hey, you beat the boss, and you're stronger now, but so are the enemies, and that's a theme that kind of gets carried through the whole game, where as you progress, each boss introduces you to stronger enemies, right? That's not like a rule, but it does make sense that they would establish that early on, because it does happen quite frequently. Also, having enemies in that little room before the pursuer fight also makes sense, because that's just empty in vanilla, which is really strange. Yeah, this room is otherwise completely empty, save for the bonfire in vanilla. And I like that they put chests here. because it does feel like a reward, geez, for beating the pursuer. And it also kind of fills out an otherwise empty room. And then over here, obviously, they have the first fake pursuer, or like, I don't know, the first non-boss pursuer encounter. And I really like that that's almost immediate after the pursuer fight, because like it's the pursuer, right? It's gonna be chasing you. Um, like that's why it's called the pursuer, right? Because it pursues undead. And also they made use of this giant empty square area, which it felt like they wanted to do in vanilla, but had nothing to play here because it was just this chest out here. And then having it be the pursuer that shows up after you're already opening the chest, or, you know, are most likely opening the chest, I think that's pretty great. Plus, you're going to be stronger than when you fought the pursuer because you have the souls from the pursuer. You most likely leveled up. Plus, there's an upgrade material to get to +4 if you're not already there. Just before this, I don't know. This feels like a really good encounter, even though, you know, most people have just fought the boss version of this just prior to this. I think it makes sense. I think it's good. On top of the fact that this one has a more expanded moveset. It doesn't use it super often, but it has like magic projectiles that it can use. I don't know if the first one has the grab attack, but this one also does, if that one does. Point is, it has more moves, so it's not literally just the boss copy and pasted. And I mean, obviously all the other stuff that I talked about. I think that's a good fight. Having all the explosive barrels here, I don't remember if they were here in vanilla, but I don't know, makes sense. It would make more sense for them to be there in vanilla just to help deal with the dogs, but regardless. I do like that they removed the dogs because it did feel like a lot, especially with what is most likely going to be a brand new enemy type at this point. But yeah. Oh, got lucky with it exploding again. Normally, I was able to, or I was able to make it explode in both vanilla and scholar, but usually I'll have to like nudge it in the correct place and then shoot it with a fire arrow or whatever. Also, the fact that you get the dull ember beforehand, it lets you very easily get a +5 weapon, or rather a +6 weapon, especially if you're comfortable with forgoing a level or two. I think that's a really good, like, choice that they give you, rather than in vanilla where you literally just can't, unless you specifically go out of your way to collect every item that happens to be a large Titanite shard. I don't know. I like having the dull ember there. I hate that they withhold it from you for so long in vanilla. It doesn't make sense to me that they would withhold infusions, which is a huge part of a lot of builds. But also, why did that do so little damage? What? But both infusions and being able to buy large Titanite shards? Like, what? Why? Also, having enemies, or actually having enemies here. Oh, I should not have done it like that. Okay, well, these are explosive barrels, and I was gonna explode them, but... or at least there are a couple explosive barrels here. But alas, I forgot and was not able to show the explosiveness of the barrels. And you can use those to take out the enemies, and I think that's really fun. I will admit that this is a weird location for a statue, but it does kind of force you to decide if you want to go here or to the forest, or I mean the Shaded Ruins first. The Shaded Woods, whatever. It forces you to make that decision. But it also gives you the option of doing both, especially if you buy the branch from Malentia, but you also don't need to buy the branch from Malentia at all. Okay, so this is an instance where Scholar forces you to engage with just more enemies in a not super interesting location. You do have access to the stairs here, which I do think is good. And the game does want to teach you crowd control. So I think this is a good place to do it. So like you can, you know, use your environment to separate the enemies. And the game expects you to learn how to deal with crowds regardless, because if you mess up, you're going to deal with a crowd. And there are instances where the game forces you to deal with a crowd anyway. Also, introducing you to that enemy before you get exploded by one after the boss fight, I think is a good idea. Anyway. I got extremely lucky there, wow. There seem to be a lot more NPC summons in Scholar. Maybe to like help compensate for the added enemies? I wonder if they did that on purpose. To like as a balancing tactic because they knew that there would be more enemies. Also, this guy did this in vanilla too. That's very strange. Don't know why he's doing that. Well, regardless. Good boss fight. The good version of the oops of the good boss fight. Okay, I'm going to actually pop a life gem now, just to be a little bit careful. Ooh, skill issue, I suppose. I swear I'm good at this game. You can't prove anything. This boss fight does feel very positioning based, not like individually as well as having multiple enemies. Like most of their attacks, Jesus, you can avoid with positioning. I mean, I can't apparently, but you're intended to be able to. And I think that's really cool, especially after the Pursuer, who is also very, very positioning based in terms of how you're expected to fight him, because in that instance, you're almost definitely not going to have a lot of ADP. But in this instance, if you don't have a lot of ADP, you know, you're going to be relying on a shield, and because of how early in the game it is, you're not going to have a super high stability shield, you're not going to have a lot of endurance for, oops, said high stability shield. I am not going to fight them up here. Oh, thank you. Hey there. Why was the other one just hanging out? Usually, one of them will throw their shield earlier. Especially in Scholar, but... Oh my god. That was scary. Not sure what it is, but I'm having... Like I said, it seems a lot more fun in Scholar, and I have no idea why. I'm pretty sure the fights are the same. But I just seem to have less fun with it in vanilla. Okay, there we go. Surprised neither of them threw their shield, though. I'm gonna heal, just to be safe. And, like, I've beaten them with a +0 broadsword. With just the Knight's base stats, I'm pretty sure. So it's not like I'm bad at this fight. I don't know. Maybe I am suffering from hubris or something. There we go. Easy. I'm gonna go from this side of the Bastille now instead of doing it after the center fight like I did last time for whatever reason. I don't think it's that dramatically different. There is one specific spot that is significantly different. And there are a few more archers or whatever, but largely this is very similar. Especially after this little courtyard section. Like, there are a lot more enemies here. Like I said, the archers and stuff. Forlorn? Where? What? Down there? Oh my god. What a terrible spot for Forlorn. Jesus. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. And wait for Forlorn. God, imagine... So there's a Pursuer fight down there, if you don't know. Imagine being invaded by Forlorn while fighting the Pursuer. That would be so awful. Oh god, I suck at fighting Forlorn. I suck at fighting NPCs generally. I feel like, especially when I'm currently being attacked by an archer. Jeez. So if you don't know, Forlorn has a random chance to invade at select spots throughout the game. There are a lot of potential invasion spots from Forlorn. And you're not guaranteed to get any of them. There we go. That's a very easy way to deal with that. And we get the Pursuer, obviously. Oh my god, and a dog. No, please. I think I might be dead. Nope, but I'm cursed, which is just as bad. Oh my god. I need to heal. There we go. Good time to heal. Thanks. Much, much more difficult Pursuer fight, if for no other reason than the environment. And the surrounding enemies, considering the other place doesn't have enemies in the fight itself. Oh my god. suffering from skill issue. Oh no. Damn it. Okay, next time I'm not going to have to deal with Forlorn, so I'm going to use an effigy. I don't usually use effigies, especially this early in the game, but I don't know, it just feels right, you know? Like, I have the Ring of Binding and everything, but I don't know. Just in my soul, I feel as though I should use an effigy. Oh, okay. I guess I'll deal with him later. Oh, this archer up here is really annoying. Deal with the dog. Okay. I'll deal with that guy when he inevitably gets knocked down due to the pursuer and not me. Oh, I forgot about the other guy. Oh, God. No, that's so messed up. Of course, he specifically hit me in the head that one time. That's so awesome. If I go too far that way, the pursuer will actually despawn, so gotta be careful about that. This is a bad time. Boys. Who knew? It actually mattered in this game. Okay, heal. Had an actually good time. Oh, God. And then immediately fail to dodge. And get hit again. Perfect. See, this is how you play Dark Souls. Okay, get behind him for this attack. That makes you essentially completely invulnerable to it. Assuming you don't stand way too close and get hit anyway. Of course. Oh, God. Get rid of this guy. Okay, we're good. Everything's fine. It's just the pursuer now. Just a weaker version of the pursuer with more attacks. Everything's fine. Easy. That should not have been that difficult. I'm just bad at the video game, I guess. Regardless, success. Or at least the hard part. And if I have to come back, which hopefully I won't, but if I do, the pursuer will be dead. So the hard part is done, regardless of what happens now. Oh, hey, you don't even need to buy a large Titanite shard to get to +6. I don't know. I guess actually there are quite a few large Titanite shards. Still, it's easier to get to +6 in Scholar, is what I was getting at. Also, I'm pretty sure there are multiple explodey guys in this place here in Scholar. Oh, God. Well, there are more than there were in Vanilla, at least. I think there's one back here, too, yeah. Not sure why there are more, but I guess it does make sense to introduce you to that enemy type. Not introduce you to them, but necessarily, but because they are used like behind corners and stuff to surprise you a lot, and this is potentially the first place that you see them too. So I don't know. I think it makes sense to use them in there. That seems like the easiest way too. And you get this ambush from them. Oh, God. I forget you can iframe that. I think otherwise this area is actually extremely similar, if not exactly the same. I'm not entirely positive, though. And I know I'm not exhaustively exploring every single area in the entire game. I don't really feel the need to in this series. Oh, I forgot about these guys. That's not really what I'm going for here. That's not what I did in Dark Souls 3 either. Just because that's not really the point. I just am like playing through the game semi-casually and like documenting my experience with that. And analyzing the level design especially. But with Dark Souls 2, it's a lot more, this game is good. Let me show you why. And with Dark Souls 3, it was, I don't know if I like this game, so I'm going to do this and document my experience on it because I think that could be a unique experience, especially for people who enjoyed the game in their first playthrough or even don't know how they feel about it themselves or whatever. So, I don't know. I just think this is a fun idea for a series. The Dark Souls 3 videos didn't get a ton of views, and that's fine. Like, it's not like they took a ton of work to make or whatever. And I had fun making them, and I'm glad I made them. And they really changed my viewpoint on Dark Souls 3 in a lot of ways. So, like, making them was a positive experience. And having to give commentary about these things, about the level design, I think also makes me think about it more. Which, you know, is part of making the video. So I am very glad I'm making these videos, regardless of how many views they get. Is the point. Views, whatever. I also really like that there's a pursuer down here because, I don't know, this room feels a little bit more important than just having a single dog here. Oh god, I am shocked that I dodged that. That did not feel like I dodged that at all. Oh my god. I forgot there are explosive barrels down here. I've never even really considered using those to my advantage. I'm gonna parry the pursuer. I haven't done that in a long time. Get parried, idiot. You can't riposte, but parrying is nice. Gives you more damage opportunity. And also trivializes the pursuer if you learn the parry timing. It's super, super easy with the buckler. But with like the Crimson Parma, the parry timing is a little bit tighter. Still pretty easy, all things considered, but not, you know, the easiest. Also, the Bastille key is here in Scholar, which I feel like makes sense. It rewards you for exploring the level by making the boss slightly easier, right? I have no idea where it's at in vanilla. It might be in Belfry Luna, but I'm not actually sure. Don't quote me on that. Is the point. I have no idea where it actually is in vanilla, but I really like where it is in Scholar. In vanilla, it feels like something that you specifically are intended to go out of your way for to make the boss a little bit easier, while in Scholar, it feels like a reward for exploring the level properly, you know? Why were you in the window? Alright. I'm pretty sure there's another pursuer fight out here. There is, wow. I gotta parry this one a bunch. I don't know if you can parry the grab, but regardless. Yeah, wow, that is a huge parry window. That's really funny. I didn't know that the buckler had such a huge parry window. That's how I learned to parry in the first place. Like, that's the very first thing I used to parry in my first playthrough. But I didn't realize the window was, like, that dramatically huge. Jesus. Genuinely makes parrying this guy so stupidly easy. Jesus. All the pursuer fights also give you a bunch of Twinkling Titanite, which just you don't get in vanilla. So if you want to use a Twinkling Titanite, oh no, that sucks. If you want to use a Twinkling Titanite weapon in vanilla, you're not going to be able to get it to a decent level until Dragonlight Castle. Is that Petrify? Petrification? I actually have no idea. Did that? Huh. I actually have no idea what status effect those guys do. I mean, I'm not, like, exactly raring to find out, but... Huh. Oh my god, hi. Oh my god. Anyway, I need to get my souls. Almost died in the exact same way. Can you follow that? Like, it looks like you can walk on this ledge, but what's even over there? I have a lot of souls, so I'm not going to figure it out right now, but... Huh. I've never noticed that before. Also, them changing that you can get attacked at the bonfire there after resting, like, just an objectively good change, right? So apparently vanilla has, like, the three weird, like, chained prisoner things, but, vanilla, or Scholar, rather, has an entire Flexile Sentry. Oh my god. Instead, which, I know some people think is worse because it's, like, a whole boss, just moved, but, there are a couple of reasons I actually prefer the Flexile Sentry being down here. First of all, the fact that the enemies that are here in vanilla are annoying and stupid. But more importantly, the Flexile Sentry is specifically designed to be fought in water like this. On top of the fact that lore-wise, it makes sense that the Flexile Sentry is here, given that it is like effectively a warden, and like, you know, a strong warden protecting arguably the most dangerous prisoner in the world, the Lost Sinner. Like, you know, I feel like it makes sense lore-wise and also gameplay-wise that they put a Lost Sinner here, or that they put the Flexile Sentry here, rather, instead of the 3 random weird enemies that you never see again. I'm actually not entirely positive if you never see that enemy again in vanilla, but it's just not in Scholar as far as I know. There might be one in a weird obscure area like in Aldia's Keep or something, but regardless. I'm actually going to equip the Blossom Kite Shield. I feel like that makes sense to do. Stamina Restoration. Maybe. It does leave the other 2 cells feeling a little empty that they put or because it's only 1 Flexile Sentry instead of the 3 enemies. But, I don't know. There's a Heide Knight in there? This whole time? I had no idea there was one in here. I guess I'll fight it. I don't know, I guess that kind of makes sense, like, lore-wise. Oh my god, I am so bad at this game. No, I didn't backstab. Okay, come on. Let me backstab this time, please. There we go. Does that drop the spear? I wonder if that's guaranteed. I assume it is, right? Huh, cool. I didn't know that there were any Heide Knights scattered about. I think it's really cool that there are. I'm actually gonna go ahead and light these up real quick. This is not a great shield as a shield, but luckily I won't really be using it as a shield. Admittedly, against a Lost Sinner, it would probably make it easier if I used a good shield, but that's not the point. It's not like the Lost Sinner is particularly difficult, especially compared to the other lords. Although I guess, like, the Rotten and Old Iron King also aren't... None of them are difficult. What am I saying? But the Lost Sinner is, like, the earliest game one, right? So... And not difficult enough to warrant not completely changing my build and playstyle, but using a different build and playstyle than the one I specifically want to at this moment. One more. Oh, okay. Thanks, I guess. Alright, I have a ton of footage to go through, which is so exciting. So, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all. I would especially like to thank Ratini, LA is my home, Gwen's July, Nick Sensei, Krista, White Flame, Port Wine, Tartaruga Lagosta, Cusco the Emperor, V, Manarok, and Ryan Rickard for supporting the channel. I don't know how to end this.